Is the stream going? Yes, I think it's this.
It's April 19th at 1:08 PM, and we're calling this session of, this work session of the Germantown Municipal School Board to order. Ryan Strain, our chairman, is out of town on business and unable to join us today, so as vice chair, I'll be running the meeting. First on the agenda is the GMSD fiscal year 23-24 general purpose fund budget summary highlights. Mr. Manuel.
So we have a book of the highlights for each of our budget, and we will also have all the details for you in each of those budget categories too that you can see. But for presentation purposes, we are going to be on page 2 in your book, and if we could also reflect that on the screen. There you go. So when we looked at our budget process, of course, as you know, this is something that's always fluid. We're going to get several revenue projections and updates as we move forward in this budget process, and that's one of the things that Mr. Jones has to accommodate. How do we deal with those budget changes? There have even been changes from what we presented last night to the FAC to what's happened over today, because we've got increases and changes in our budgets. But here's the overview of what we see as revenue. So as you know, when we look at county taxes, there's a big pot of money, and we always talk about the WFTE, ADA, the weighted full-time equivalent. They weight students at different amounts. Our WFTE ADA has gone up. We're up to 4.3%. I think we're at like 4.24% in the county. When we look at that big pot of funding, and I think it's $427 million, I may be wrong, but it's something around $427 million for all the school districts in Shelby County Schools. We get a slice of that pie based on our percentage of WFT ADA. For us, that equates to that 28,630 number that you see on your sheet. The next line are the city taxes, and that stays consistent. As you know, for any district that's running a municipal school district, we get the equivalent of 15 cents on every $100 of property taxes. And so they calculate that, and the finance department from the city works with Mr. Jones, and you can see that's approximately $3 million that comes from the city of Germantown. When we look at other charges, other local revenue, we won't break all those down. Those are smaller than when you look at the other budget, but Mr. Jones can give you details of whether we're talking about mixed drink taxes or all those specifics, but we're going to hit the big categories. The one that has changed that we're looking at are the state education funds. And so you can see that TISA, was historically the BEP funding. Now that is the TISA funding. That's the $35 million number there. And that's where we've seen an increase, but I was very careful to warn our staff as we were going through this process that at the same time that they are increasing this number, they're getting rid of other grants and things that we had historically, and so those had to be baked into our numbers, and you'll see that reflected. So we have things that are coming over to our general fund account because they were previously paid for out of grants. So those are, also here to note, we have budgeted $1.8 million to come from our reserves. I do not expect that we'll spend that amount of funding. As you know, this always changes. Last year we budgeted $8 million and did not spend that money. So for us, right now our reserve is sitting around $30 million, but we're projecting that we're going to finish the year at around $20 million when we look at our reserves. So it's my expectation that with the positive variances that we always see, we won't have an impact on our reserves. But no, for the balancing and the budgeting purposes, that's what you see there. So the overall revenue category for us is that 69,979 number. So $69 million for our revenues.
Wasn't some of the reserve last year a deal with the Houston Middle project where we had money allocated?
So we had those allocations and come over.
And I guess I still, and we might all be in the same position here. I still really don't have a grasp on the TISA formula. I know it's supposed to include state and local contribution when you look at the formula.
So for us, we have parceled that out. So
Okay.
now that number you see is the money that is coming from the state. We've already, that was the change that
The
we saw
base number,
yesterday
the
when they
ba-
were doing the Seaburn-Tasser indexes. This is the base number. Well, it's more than the base. It's the number that we see along with our unique learning needs is all included in that number.
So the local funding portion, part of TISA, then is broken out into the city and county
Yes.
taxes.
Well, not the city. So
Okay.
city is not considered.
Okay.
When you see that county tax number of 28 million that we have there, that's included there. So what they did was they do a fiscal index. So there are two different formulas they use. That's where I'm using the terms CBER and TASSER. So it's these, and I couldn't calculate them if I had to, but they have these two formulas they plug in. It's really the community's ability to pay. And so what they determine is what should Shelby County be putting into education based on what they're putting into education. Shelby County far exceeds what they're required to put into that. So what holds us the same is the maintenance of effort with Shelby County schools. So that 400, whatever the number is, 427 million for all education funding in the county, that stays consistent with that maintenance of effort funding. So we're always above. So
I know that, and you mentioned about the grants, like coordinated school health. We used to get a grant for that. Now, if you listened to the General Assembly last year when they were talking about TISA, they indicated that that was all just being baked in the formula and that districts wouldn't see a cut. But I think that what you're saying is we're seeing a reduction in funds. And if we're able to
Yeah.
detail that, I'd like to follow up with Chairman White
Sure.
to make
Well,
sure he understands that
yes.
this isn't exactly how they thought it was going to be and give him some real numbers
Yeah.
on that.
So we have seen an increase. So it has been a positive variance for us. What I'm saying is when we see the number like a 3.5 million increase in our TISA funding, you can't be like, oh, let's get ready to spend 3.5 million. You have to back those other things out that were going away if you're going to continue those same programs, which is what you're saying. But it's not as big an increase as there when they say, hey, you're getting this big increase. You got to take those things off the top of that funding. So yes, and we'll talk about these as we go through, but the main things that we saw differences that we have to account for: coordinated school health, and I think that was $90,000 now is baked into that TISA funding. Safety school grants was another one that was $47,000 that has to be included in that. The other piece that has to be included, but we haven't got the exact amount because they haven't finished the governor's plans yet. The governor said that we have to provide a COLA or step for all teachers. Now, we don't know exactly which amount that is, but they said that's included in this amount of money that you've also seen this increase, and we have to prove or document that it's going directly to staff for cost of living, COLAs, cost of living increases, but we don't know that exact amount of money. We are going to be above that amount of money that we're investing in that, so that's not a concern, but it's something that we'll have to back out to if they're saying that that's part of it's already in there. It's hard for all the superintendents to really believe that was the case, especially with the increase, because they provided us this number for TISA before the governor ever proposed his increases in salaries. So it's hard to make that line up time-wise. But all that being said, we're going to show how we have some positive things to really increase and add to our district and impact staff and programming. So I'm excited about what we are going to be able to do with those increases. But I do want to enter with caution that it's not just wide open for spending. But you can see the pie chart below of how it breaks out on that page for the general fund revenues. I think the next one, I presented the FAC just so people understand the great work that we have done so far. This isn't tied so much to this budget, but you do see the March balance sheet that Mr. Jones is going to read to you at our next board meeting that you'll receive. But I think for us, it's important to note that we are in a very strong financial position for this district. And I'm thankful to this board and previous boards for how we have moved conservatively so that when we do have changes like we saw last year with our title funding where they cut us mid-year and mid-budget, that we're able to handle those types of changes. But because of that, what we have seen, we had $0 in our cafeteria fund reserve. And you can see that over the past 9 years, I think we had a $30,000 loss the first year. But we have now built a $1.1 million reserve in our cafeteria fund, and that's a separate standalone fund. We've talked about our health insurance fund. We're sitting at $1.5 million in our health insurance reserve. And once again, y'all, we are self-insured with health insurance. And we are going to be able to continue again going into our 10th year of not seeing a health insurance increase for our staff. So when the cost of inflation is making their prices go up at the pump, and we have all these issues when they go to the grocery store, they're not seeing it that compounded on top of it. We're able to provide the same health insurance costs that we had for 10 years. That's something that we could sing from the rooftop. The other thing that we have to provide, OPEB, so the other post-employment benefits. So just so you know, when we were formed as a district, one of the benefits that we provided with staff, and I think we changed it after the first 2 or 3 years, we closed that benefit. It's not the same as it was for those staff. We provide that health insurance until they hit 65 years of age, and Medicare takes over as the primary insurer. But we have funded that benefit for our staff moving forward. So we have put the maximum amount in for contributing to the ARC, and that's the annual required contribution. And we built an OPEB reserve of over $4.7 million so that we will never have a balloon payment for our retirees' health benefits. When we look at our current reserves, once again, we're sitting at $30 million, but I think realistically we're projecting around 20 once we finish all the projects for this year. And we put almost 100, at the same time of building all these reserves and being strong with the district, we have invested, with the city's help and with other funding sources, almost over $97 million into our facilities. And you've seen those changes at each of our schools. So moving very strong, and we want to continue that with our budgeting practices. So, one of the things that you'll see here, notice that there will be changes, and we'll provide the updated documents to you. So, Ms. Griffith, you were looking for that big book that'll come before the board meeting. We just found out yesterday that there have been positive changes for us. We see an increase of $1.2 million in our state funds than what we had planned during the 2 weeks or months leading up to this budgeting process. So we had proposed a 2% cost of living, and we were taking more money out of our reserve. So we have now changed that based on that increase in our funding, and we lowered the amount that we would be taking from our reserve and increased our cost of living for our staff to a 3% increase for all of our staff. So that is a positive change that we have, especially when you think about what we're seeing with inflation and what families are really experiencing. So on these pages, so I do want to highlight, that's why we made sure we put the pink bar at the top. Salaries will be updated to reflect an additional 1% within these categories. We didn't have enough time to make that adjustment. But you have seen that the increases are reflected on the revenue page that we just looked at. So we've already included those increases and reduced, but it's just not updated in these individual salary lines. So now we'll get into what are the changes from last year's budget to this year's budget. So we have updated this page to reflect that increased funding. So we have seen an increase and projecting an increase of the local option sales tax of $972,000. We've seen an increase in the TISA funding of $3.2 million. We see a reduction in this budget of textbook purchases of $495,000 because remember last year was a math textbook adoption, so it was more expensive than normal years. We have seen reduction in the TCRS contribution rate, and so we'll go back for the public to explain. All of our employees are invested in a retirement plan that's managed by the state. That's the TCRS, Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. It is one of the best retirement plans in the country. I think it's the third best plan in the country, and it's doing really positive results. So on each employee's paycheck, there's a portion that they have to pay into that TCRS retirement account, but the district also has to pay even a bigger portion into that retirement account for each of our employees. So each year we get a notification from the TCRS about what the rate is that we're going to have to contribute. And so, like I said, we have seen a decrease because that plan is managed well. It's going from an 8.69% contribution rate to a 6.81 contribution rate. So that equates to the district of a savings about $592,000 in the budget. So that's a positive variance for us. And we also see a change of 2.5, and I think that's a number that needs to be changed. We didn't change that on that page. So it's correct on the screen, but I think it's incorrect in your books. That's where we reduce the amount that we're allocating from reserves. We're changing it to 1.8 million, or 1,848,712 from reserves. Just like I said, those were last minute changes for us. So are there any questions so far on our revenues or available funds? And I have staff that can answer questions if you have them at this time.
And it might go to the expense. I'll go ahead and ask. So at the end of FY24, what are we thinking the reserves are going to be? And obviously things will come up, but what's the goal for the reserve balance?
If we don't have any positive variances, I think we would see 19 million.
Okay.
But I do want to give you the caveat: we've never seen a year where we haven't increased the reserve. Even when we've been doing all those things, we budget conservatively when we're doing projections of revenue. So my guess is that we will be at 20 million or higher, because like I said, this year we thought we were going to spend, well below that.
All right. Thanks.
Mr. Jones, I don't know if you would concur with that. That's one of the ways we've built this over the years.
I know we've talked about this over the years, but for purposes today, what's kind of the threshold of our reserve where we feel comfortable where it's at this place and above, if that makes sense?
So this is one of the things that I was trying to explain, but I didn't go into a lot of detail at FAC. I was trying to go really fast for them. So we get, and Dr. Chatham, so if you need me to slow down, I know you're new to this too. We get our funding streams in different ways. And if you think about when people pay taxes, that's really a way that you can think about how our cash flow hits us. So when we think about the state funds, and that's now TISA, it was the BEP, that starts coming in August, and that's about 50% of our reserve or our revenue. We see that money coming in August. But that's not the majority of our fund. A lot of our funding is coming from from the county funds. Well, the county funds are majority property tax. And so if you think about when you're paying your property taxes, most people are paying those from December to February. That's when those start hitting our bank account, when we see those coming in. So they catch up what they owe us for that amount of funding. So what you see actually happening in the bank account is you see the money that we've saved up with our reserve starts dropping as we're paying all of our bills. And then when we start receiving the county funding for education, it fills back up again. So Mr. Jones, I'm not sure the number that you would say now currently. I would fathom 9 million would be the number, but Mr. Jones has a better feel of, as our overall expenditures and budget increases.
I was just going to say around 8 million for cash flow needs.
So for us, just to pay the bills, we're talking about an $8 million reserve that's necessary. For a district, I don't think that's something that we should strive for to be sitting there. Just like we saw this past year with our title funds, I think we need to have several million above that. Now, I don't think we have ever sat down, and that's something that we should discuss as a board to say what would be that number to sit above that cash flow amount to make us feel comfortable. But I don't ever want to get, I would say, several million above that 8 million.
Well, and I feel like with this being the first year of TISA and a lot of transition, riding a little higher, preparing for things that we don't necessarily anticipate, or preparing that things may pop up, because this is definitely going to be uncharted territory as far as that goes. So I'm inclined to certainly be.
Yes. So I can tell you for our purposes, and Mr. Jones may echo this, I would say 3 million above whatever that base cash flow would be a good amount for us to aim for as a board. I know that there are other districts who don't have this luxury. We are in a really good position that we do have this, but I would say 11 million is our target number that I would want to keep. If our revenues and expenditures are at the same amount. If your revenues and expenditures increase, of course, that amount for cash flow is going to also increase. So you would just have to adjust accordingly.
And basic expenses are increasing. So, okay.
So at this time, 11 million would be the number.
We kind of historically hung out. I mean, I know we're 30 million planning to be 20?
Well, like I said, we've been building this over the years because when we first started out, our first year, we had to borrow money from the city to get started. So we had, I think it was a $800,000 or $8 million revenue anticipatory note that we borrowed from them, but we paid that back within the first year. From years 2 till 9, where we are now, we've been building that every single year.
Okay.
So we've always been well above the cash flow amount.
So this would be the kind of the first period that we're actually looking at that coming down.
No, actually, last year would have been because, like I said, we put $8 million from our reserve into that, and we didn't see a decrease in that amount
Okay.
of money.
And when we're in the community, like explaining to people that this reserve is not like spending money, that's important because, people see, oh, this balance. And yeah, but again, talking about the operational cost that has to offset throughout the school year, and the timetable, like you just described, of the funding and as it arrives to us is really important conversation that has to be had when people ask about it, because it's just because it's there doesn't mean it's not earmarked for like 12
That's right.
other things.
And we also, I think this is the first time that we start feeling more comfortable. I think we would have planned to be more strategic with that reserve had we not experienced COVID and gone through. We didn't know what was going to happen with tax bases or revenue. We were worried that we were going to see dramatic decreases in our sales tax, but everybody went out and spent money during that time. So those are all things that we need to be aware of. So we're in a good place. Other questions on revenues? Okay, now we can go into some of the expenditures that you see here. So just to explain, the first recommendation that we have for our budget, that is a 3% cost of living, that's the COLA, plus the step increases. So for all staff in GMSD, there are different pay scales. Ms. Stratton, can you give me how many different pay scales do we have? 49? How many? What is it? 45 different pay scales that we have where people are on different steps depending on their position. And so as they get more money, they get an increase as they're matriculating up in those positions. Some positions, like central office positions, a lot of those may have 5 steps, but you may have teachers that have 19 steps that they have. So when they hit that top step, they cap out, and that'll be the same money that they receive year after year after year. The only time that changes is when the board approves a cost of living adjustment. And whatever that cost of living adjustment is, it slides that whole scale. So if they are at the top of the scale, they would just see, so in this case, we're recommending a 3% increase. That slides that scale 3%. So when we talk about steps, that's for those people who have not capped out or topped out on their different scales. So a teacher who may be at step 12, they're going to move from step 12 to step 13 this next year. On top of that, they also get the increase because step 12 just became what was typically step 14. So you see a slide. So by doing both of those things, that equates to $2.1 million.
And last year we caught up the sort of, I call it frozen steps.
That's
so
correct.
Everybody got to where they were.
That's right. So in a previous year when we didn't have a lot of money and we were trying to stay competitive, we still want to provide a cost of living. So we want to provide something that was going to hit everybody. If you only provide steps, it didn't hit the people at the top of those pay scales. So I forgot what year it was. I want to say 4 years ago, we decided that we were going to try to give something to everybody. And so we didn't give steps. So people didn't move from step 12 to 13 or wherever they were in their journey. But we did move the whole scale up, so everybody saw an increase. So last year, because the board was having a positive fiscal year, we decided that we caught up those steps for the people who were here during that time, and we also provided the cost of living for those individuals. Just for teachers, yes.
On the steps, yeah.
Other questions about the cost of living?
I think this goes directly, obviously, as it says here, strategic plan, recruit, develop, and retain exemplary employees. I mean, people, we see it at the events, the snapshots. I mean, if there's going to be 5 positions at a school and we have 70 people show up and they're just like, I really just want to work here, whatever, just please, I want to work here. That's a beautiful place to be, but we also have to continue to be competitive employer in our market, if you will, for this industry, and everything that we do in this regard, to me, is to that end. And frankly, the folks we already have earned it. So I think it's really important when we're also talking to people in the community about the investments that are being made. When people say, oh, what about this in the budget and this in the budget? And you look at the total, and I said, well, take out all the people, and this is all we have left. And we make magic happen with that little bit. But it's investing in our people. And I
Yes.
think that is something that continues to need to be shared, because I think it's important not only internally amongst our staff, but out in the community too, that we want to have the best possible people in our buildings every day for the benefit of
Agreed.
students.
And for a lot of positions, especially the hardest staff
And
ones,
not just, yes,
one of the first things they're looking at is that rate of pay compared to the other municipal districts, and that's something that we always want to be competitive. So what you'll see that I've reflected throughout here, and then I've tried to group my thoughts and how we went through this process. I almost went through Maslow's hierarchy of needs, thinking about what are the basics that we have to have for the district. So what are fixed costs? What are revenue streams that are going away from us? And then we move into what are more aspirational things and things that we want to accomplish as a district. So we've tried to group those into categories on the pages. So I think the first, besides the cost of living, the first thing that we were trying to accomplish were people who were, hold on a second. Excuse me. I'm gonna need a water. People who were working for us. They are working for us right now, but their positions are paid for other funding streams, and we want to continue those benefits. Know that is something that we wanted to continue. So here are the positions listed or things that are currently working for us, but we're transferring over because their funding stream went away. We're moving them to the general fund. So we currently have ESSER 3 positions. We have 2 instructional coaches, and so you can see that's with benefits, that money there for $171,000. Another ESSER 3 position that we were paying for that was beneficial were the day porters and at each of our schools, and those are the people who are GMSD employees but are cleaning those schools. And board members, if you remember, that was something that people really talked about, what a difference that made at each of our schools, because they're invested in our schools, they're employees. Also too included there is the help desk technician. So we have an individual who answers calls, but they can do it for any parent. So any computer issues or struggles that you're having, they answer that 24/7. They're answering that call for you to help you with your computer problems. So you can see the amount there of $321,000 for those individuals. We have a whole child coordinator position that was included in ESSER 3 positions. This is actually Mr. Hattow's position. He also works at counseling, so he's working with Leadership Academy, he's working with our goal students, and he's also working with families that on the attendance piece, when they have hit that 3rd tier, and this is not if you've just gotten a letter for being 10 days, but people who are really struggling, people who are really struggling with coming to school, a lot of times there are other issues, so he assists those families with those needs. We have removed the whole child director position. That position is being phased out. That is no longer existing for us. And then the last piece that you see are Title I teachers. You can see that money there. I believe there are 2 Title I teachers that are included in that $170,000. So those were existing positions. I'll be glad to talk about any of those positions, or if you have questions on those before we move to the next section.
Do we know, or could you tell us the instructional coaches, are those for a specific, like,
Yeah,
grade
so
band, school level?
we have one for math and one for ELA,
Oh, so,
and they're working with our elementary schools right now,
okay,
and middle, elementary and middle.
thank you. And then the day I will say this, as I go in the PTO liaison capacity to the schools, and hear what the day porters' contributions have been, not only just from an overall cleanliness of our facilities, but just the investment they've made and the staff and students and families getting to know everyone. I mean, we had one here last month, I think, with the cape on from Farmington who just pitched in and went way above and beyond. I know why we hired them in the beginning and why we established those positions, but I would say that they're paying dividends in a way that I never even could have imagined, just being such an asset in our facilities. So I'm glad to see, we knew that funding was temporary, but I'm glad to see that we're prioritizing those roles.
You said the whole child director position was being phased out. Is that different from the coordinator spot here?
Sorry. Yes, we had both of those positions.
Okay.
So we had the whole child coordinator position prior to the ESSER funding coming in. And so that was an addition when we added that director position. Okay, we'll move on to the next. So one of the things that we have to work with staff, even before we grant transfers for students, and we have to do this at the beginning of each school year, every few days they're turning in enrollment numbers for their grade levels. And so we used to call them the BEP sheets. I guess we're going to have call them the TISA sheets now. They're staffing sheets, and they're actually spreadsheets that have formulas, because we have to look at each grade level. We are looking at the grade band. So K3, for example, we look at the number of kids in each grade level. We look at the number of teachers that are assigned to that grade level, and we're doing lots of different comparisons. So we're looking, because a lot of times we always call it the pig and the snake. You may have a big class that comes through a grade level. We're looking at the number of kids in each grade level, and we do have requirements of maximum sizes that we have. We also have averages that we can't go past when we look at a grade level and a grade band. So we're looking at each grade bands in schools. We're comparing them to other schools. We're also looking at the K3 grade band. And for kindergarten, we never know exactly the number that we're going to receive, but we do a 3-year average to do the projection of kindergartners. So Mr. Bland and his department do a lot of work before we grant transfers to look at those numbers, and that's how we really define what capacity we're going to have to grant those seats in our schools. So not only are we doing that by school, we're also looking at a comparison between the schools, because it wouldn't work, for example, if you had a K3, and we see this happen periodically, and I'm just making these numbers up. So let's say at Riverdale, for example, we had a K3 average where they were up to 19.8, and then we look over and we see that Farmington's staffing is sitting at a 1 to 15 ratio of teachers to students. For us as a district, that's not equitable. We want to make sure we're providing comparable services at all of our schools. So we have to take into consideration those numbers when we're looking at staffing of our schools. We also have to look, and Ms. Huffman and her team do a lot of work with this, and I know when we're talking about the gifted students also, I know Ms. Abel's department plays a role, but I know they're all merged together. They're looking at individual student needs in classrooms. So they're looking at amounts of assistance, they're looking at services that have to be provided for those students. So we have to come up with, how are we staffing all the different types of students that we have in our schools? So what you see here are those growth positions based on our studies of the numbers and what we predict coming up to our each of our schools. So we have 2 special education teachers here. I know specifically one of those is we have to expand a section at Farmington Elementary School for special education preschool. We have 4 regular education teachers. And when we talk about those regular education teachers, give me the exact school locations again that we were talking about, Ms. Abel. So we have 1 at Forest Hill, 1 at Farmington at elementary school levels, and then we have 2 at Houston High. But I want to be clear on the 2 at Houston High School. These are more strategic for us, and this is something that we've talked about as a board. When I think about our goals, especially around math and those students who are encountering Algebra 1, at the high school, I've told Ms. Abel and her department we want to make an investment in how we are working around those math scores. And so they're coming up with a system of, and they're probably going to be hybrid teaching positions with them too, where they are teaching students but they're also working with the other teachers, either in co-teach capacities or lead teacher capacities, to make sure that we are trying to really move that impact on students taking math at the high school. So that's one of our objectives that we have.
Was one of those aviation as well? Because I saw on social media, I think they were looking for an aviation.
That is, but I think we already had that CTE position that we had not
Got it.
that we
Okay.
had not filled. So we did already have that one, but no, these two specifically are for our math positions.
And one thing I'd like to point out, I know I've mentioned it, but just to reinforce. So, as part of we were going to call it the kindergarten retention bill, they rolled that to January 24. Representative Sapicki he was very specific in looking at math, as they also were looking at ELA. And so I think somehow we need to be thinking ahead on if they are going to do something with math similar to what they did with ELA, and it'll probably be more going into the latter half of next calendar year and beyond. But I think we need to have that on our radar going forward, that this could, we might have to dedicate even more resources to math at their earlier ages. I know obviously this is a high school focus, and that we've talked about that at length, how much that's needed. But I think at the elementary level there might be something along the lines of accountability or something similar to third grade retention, but with math going forward.
We agree 100%. I think, and that was one of the things that's on the cutting room floor, that I think we would definitely have more interventionists, more assistance. One thing I will highlight in regards to that summer camp funding, we saw dramatic changes, and across the state, there are a lot of people who are not sure how they're going to provide the summer camp services, because they expanded it to K-8, where we have students and we're having to identify students and bring them into the camps. At the same time, we were told that we were going to receive the same amount of funding for summer camp, and they did not. They saw dramatic reductions in the funding for those summer camps across the state. Department of Education says that they had said that it was going to stay the same because that was their request to our legislative body, but the legislative body did not agree, and so we've seen dramatic cuts. So expectations for what we're providing camp, who we're providing camp for, has dramatically expanded, and the funding has been reduced. So I think you're correct that this may be a burden that we're starting to see impact the general fund when we start thinking about how we're providing camp services.
Is this camp specifically around the third grade
That's
retention?
correct. So
Okay.
or it's not just third grade, but it's for students, and we're looking at their performance on assessments. Okay, so back to we were in the 4 regular education teachers, and you can see that amount there. The last one that we have there is a gifted case manager that I believe is going to serve both Forest Hill and Houston Middle School. And so that's based on our numbers of students and our caseloads there for that number. And I think one of the things that I saw several of your pictures at the Envision Expo, how incredible an event that was for our teams and our staff and our schools that they created. But that's just a visual representation of the great things that those teachers are doing, our staff are doing at those schools. So the last category are things that we have that are, I call them aspirational or transitional things that I feel like we need to accomplish. So the first is a school nurse's pay upgrade. When we were looking at other districts that were comparable to us, our pay scale was not the same for our nurses. This is a slight increase that we see for a nursing position. So this is spread out amongst all the nurses at each of our schools. So there's an increase of $21,000 there.
And that was, in identifying, comparing across, I guess, municipal districts, does this get us in line with the next or with the highest, or would this just get us closer to?
It gets us closer to some of our neighbors, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So you'll be able to, and if you want, we can provide you to the pay scales that we have. But
I'd be very curious to see. Yes, please.
yes, that was part of the decision making.
Thank you.
So the next position we have, once again, these are aspirational. With our increases that we see in all of these state initiatives. One of the things that I want to create is, I don't want to call them a jack of all trades, and it's hard to explain all these things. We have all these different initiatives that we're trying to accomplish with the state. One of those things that we've been talking about is the TISA funding, and one of the challenges that we have with Ms. Huffman, they do have limited staff that are able to look at each student's coding and numbers. We want to make sure that we have staff members that are looking at those unique learning needs, those different codes, but not just for special needs. We want to make sure that we're doing that for all of our different funding streams and our students, whether they're ELL. So every category that we have there, whether you're talking about the CTE, we want an individual who's going to serve that function. So that's one part of this individual's roles when we talk about that super. So you could put TISA, TISA management. Other pieces that I think about that I want too is I want them to play a role in our counseling pieces also. So when we think about our students and we talk about what are those metrics we're trying to hit for students graduating, we're trying to hit students that are going to have that, hit that ready graduate indicator, and not just with the ACT score that we have. We want to make sure that they have the opportunities for those 4 EPSOs, and I think they could assist our counseling department with tracking and monitoring those students so that every student has a plan when they walk in the door as a freshman that says, here's your EPSO plan, and here's how you are going to make sure that you're getting these extra opportunities, whether it's career or whether it's in AP or dual enrollment. So this person's going to have to manage all of those pieces too. So there's going to be counseling components along with compliance components with this individual. So there is a supervisor position that I'm recommending. And the next 2 are a little more bittersweet for us. As you're aware, we are losing a very valued person for our school district. That's Ms. Vijaya Subramani. She's moving to Georgia from us, and I can't tell you how much we have grown in our relationship together or with the district, and just knowing what we do and how we operate. And you've seen that, how she works with you, and I want to make sure that she has the ability to train the person who's going to replace her. And so this is an overlap salary so that she can train them during that time. So I can go ahead and bring that person on board so they can really be working with us from July to December until we see Ms. Subramani's transition. The same thing is true that we have in human resources world. So we have Ms. Pat Pritchard, who we're continuing on a 120-day contract. That's a part-time contract for us so that she can train up the individual who is replacing her. So this is all about, when we talk about transitioning and making sure that we have quality people who are training them. I can think of no one better than Ms. Subramani to train her replacement. So do we have questions on aspirational or transitional additions that we have for the district?
To jump off Angela's question on the nurse upgrade, do we have trouble staffing those roles? I just know in my day-to-day world, I mean, we've had trouble keeping enough people to move patients. Is this going to help us do that?
It'll help us be competitive. So I don't know if we have horrible trouble staff. I mean, it's not like we have deep pools of individuals. Our hours are probably better than yours.
You don't get to work with me.
When you think about the school hours and what they're dealing with, it's a little bit different. But yes, we don't have deep pools of people who are filling those positions.
Those spots are hard to hire for,
Yes.
and just want to be sure that isn't a huge hindrance to us doing that.
This gets us a step closer, and there's obviously more that we could do here, but this gets us a step closer.
Often as the Chatham boys visit the Riverdale nurses, I'm grateful for them.
Are there other questions on staff recruitment or retention? Okay, that moves us over to operations amounts. So once again, when we think about changes or things that we're trying to accomplish on this sheet, and it may have to go, I think your order on the slides is a little bit different than what we have on our book, but the first items that we have under operations are the fixed costs. So and these things were actually included for us before we even started looking at the other things when we were talking about academics, because these are the things that we have to have. So utility costs are increasing across the board. And so have you seen at your house, or you've seen anytime you go to businesses, and Ms. Griffith, I think you mentioned this, or everything's becoming more expensive. We see an increased cost and projection for utilities of $120,000 across all of our schools in district for the year. We added square feet when we added the Houston Middle School addition for us, so we see increased costs also related to that. So SKB cleaning costs are increased there. Repair to our buildings, so we do have a maintenance contract that provide small electrical and plumbing, and they provide services. There's an increased cost for that contract too. The board has approved the Durham transportation contract, so you know there was an increased cost there of $350,000. We've also seen other operation services, and you'll see when you see the breakdown of the other spreadsheets, whether we're talking about fertilizing, managing our facilities, those are the other contracted services, other small services that we have provided, whether it's inspections of elevators, you name, all those services have seen an increase across the board. And last, in this fixed cost, we've seen an increase in our software costs. Mr. Pierce is here if we do have specific questions about budget, but we saw this across the board, some more than others, but we saw our software costs increase when we looked at our budget amounts. One specifically that we saw a more dramatic increase was in the GoGuardian software package that we have, and you know that monitors student emails when they talk about self-harm or harming others. It's monitoring all those things that hit our servers, and we know that has saved a lot of students that program that software. So we would want to continue the software costs. So I'll stop there if you have questions on fixed costs.
To that point, if it were $850,000, I'd be like, all right, let's find a way, for the reasons you just described. What was the software specific to that? I know we've talked about, and we've done a lot of parent engagement, even recently at one of our schools. It's been shared district-wide, specific to, and kind of what you were talking about, right, when we sat down, and we're mentioning a couple of minutes ago, just about how we can invest in training parents and further training our students to be diligent and, unfortunately, being solicited or being come
Yes.
after in an online world that we live in. And the GoGuardian just kind of reminded me of that. That's why I'm mentioning it now.
So I'll be glad to talk for a second if y'all.
Or you were
okay
talking
with
about that
Yes.
with the faith base.
So several board members, y'all were able to attend the TSBA event from where we had a representative from Homeland Security present to us. And I think it was one of the most disturbing presentations we had, but it makes you realize as a parent what a dangerous world we live in for our students. And it is the new wave of cyber attack. What they do is they actually find students who have posted, and typically it's not posted, y'all, so I don't want to misrepresent this. There are times where students make mistakes and they send inappropriate pictures to a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and there are times that those don't stay private between those individuals, and they'll share them with someone else. Or else there are also times where there are individuals that have fake identities and they create a catfish identity, and they're requesting and reaching out. In the presentation that we heard, we were seeing presentations from parents that had this happen to them, where somebody had created a fake profile and they were requesting inappropriate pictures from somebody. Once they have you, that's when it turns south. Then they start to blackmail you. And so at first they're blackmailing the students and they're asking them for Venmo, or they're asking for additional money, but they make it so personal because they're tracking these students on social media, and they're saying, hey, I know where you go to church. I know which teams you're on. I know which ball leagues you're on. And so I'm going to send this to your pastor. I'm going to send this to your parents. I'm going to send this unless you send me this money. And it puts students in a very difficult position, because do they go to their parents and tell them that this horrible thing has happened, and how they get support? But what was even worse was in the presentation that we heard from Homeland Security, we had a mama bear that found out about this, got on there, and it wasn't in our school districts. And she went after the individual and said, hey, I know you've got these of my child. How dare you? I'm going to go after you. And that person was even more embraced and said, hey, if you don't send me nude images of you, I'm going to send this to your work. I'm going to send this to your family. So the blackmail got taken to an even deeper level. So there's no bounds that they need to go. For us, this is something that we are talking about as a district, about how to serve our community to make sure that we're keeping our students safe. So we were talking about, and this is something we mentioned with our faith-based council. So we had a meeting with different religious representatives from different religious institutions, all in the area of all different denominations, religions, about how we can serve families. And so I think that's something that we're going to expand upon to make sure that our parents, our students are educated so that we can be protected. And what happens when they do make a mistake, and it's okay that they've made that mistake, but how can they get the support from the Germantown Police Department? How can they get that support from Homeland Security? I think that's something moving forward that we definitely want to discuss to serve our families.
Thank you. I just want to be clear, this is not something we're anticipating. It's happening as we speak in our community to our students. And so whatever our ability is to, one, educate the community, to be vigilant, and also partner with local law enforcement, and to make sure our students have the confidence and confidentiality to encourage them to go to their parents, and in the event something like this that they get caught up in, and have those supports for everybody involved. It scares me to death, and I know a lot of people that have been through it. So I really appreciate the emphasis on that, and I mean, I feel like we are obligated to do the best we can to really help circumvent a lot any further than, God forbid, is taking place, because we are in a position to help everyone be knowledgeable about this or educate them about this. Last thing I want is someone to go, it happened to my kid took matters into their own hands and they're gone, but I didn't know this was a thing.
Yes, so we're going to continue the fight, and that's something we're working with our Student Services Department. We're going to make sure that we're continuing to get that message out there. First of all, just a warning to our students, and then on the backside of that, warning our parents, like what happens when you do see this type of thing, and it's okay. It's going to be okay. There are going to be ways that they can remedy it, but just know what are those supports that you can have if you're in that situation. What can you do? But it's happening. Now okay. So back where we were in the budget, we were talking about fixed cost for things for the district. I think our next category of things that we're looking at are existing items, just like existing positions that we have with people that we want to continue, but have been lost due to a funding stream. So the Safe School grants for us, we use that for security camera upgrades. We're always looking at those, whether it's the flock cameras or other cameras. That's something that we want to make sure that we're continuing. So that was $47,000 for security camera upgrades.
Is this for repair and replacement of security cameras that may not be working?
Or new.
Or new.
Yes, it's
Okay.
whatever Mr. Crump, Mr. Bland, when they're doing an analysis of those, it provides all of those things.
Okay, this is specific to hardware, not system, like not the software that.
I think it could be used for all of those purposes, but this is just a line item for us. We could spend out of that.
But not the day-to-day software that we use is not included in this.
Okay, that's a totally separate.
We do, yes. This is not all encompassing of what we're spending
No,
on
I
cameras.
know that, but
no,
I'm-
not even close.
Specific to security camera equipment, so that's why I'm.
No, this is just a small amount that we were receiving from an outside grant that we want to continue that money in the budget.
That's going away.
Yeah, Mr. Pierce is probably like, not even a drop in the bucket.
And when we talk about school safety, that's going to come up because it's been, a lot, as you can imagine, we've heard from a lot of folks in the community, and one of the biggest things that we're, talking about, and to me, I've been hearing about is what are we doing on the front end, to try to keep something from happening or identifying it before it happens. And a lot of that has to do with imaging, I feel like, and our people that manage that information. So I know that's totally separate. That's why I just wanted to say that out loud, though, while we're talking about equipment instead of all the other stuff that goes with it. Thank you.
And that leads us to our last category of aspirational or transitional things that we want to add under operations. For us, this is not all of it, and I don't want you to think that I know this is all of it. It's just a step in the right direction. Similar to what we did with fine arts, where we were looking at what are parents putting into our programs that are things that should be provided by the district that are minimal. We put some substantial money to offset when they were bringing out in instructors from off campus that are working with our staff, and they're going through our human resources now, and they're getting paid through us instead of the boosters paying for those positions. We were talking about the same thing with our athletic fields. There should be minimal amounts of funding that we are putting into our facilities, whether we're talking about fertilizer, cutting grass, or turfus, the material that they're putting out. There should be a minimal amount. And so Mr. Bland was working with our athletic teams to talk about what type of money would we need to put in to start providing some assistance for that. And that's this $50,000 to go towards field maintenance in our facilities. So he will work with the coaches to come up with a detailed plan and accounting to document what that looks like.
Yeah, so I think this is a great thing, and but just to clarify, so this will be going for the soccer field at HMS, the baseball field, and now whatever for the softball field, which that's all new.
Yes.
So softball should be, although there will be ongoing fertilizer.
Yes.
And
And there's also cost for the football field, even though it's a turf field. When you think about the rubber that they have to bring in and the brushing, I think that's 2 times a year that they have to come in and they have to
That's a good
take
point.
care of that field. So they're
Okay. Yeah, I think that, and then I know, speaking of Mustang Madness, I think most of their fundraising, it seems like it goes towards field maintenance. And then for the baseball, that's a lot of use over there. And obviously, with the grass and the dirt, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But yeah, it's clearly, so I'm glad to see us be able to do this. Now, just as we're going through here, because I'm thinking of other things in my mind. So you mentioned like the band. So all that is continued. So this is only focusing on changes to.
Yeah. So what you see before you, like if you take last year's budget and our budget's online and you look at that, this is showing you all the changes that are on top of that. So assume that all of those services that are provided are still provided and continuing in that previous budget.
So, and for this category specifically, I know we've had discussions about the portables. We've got portables at Farmington and Dogwood. So I don't know. I don't think we ever really decided on a direction. I think, just doing research, I know that through the Tennessee Municipal League, we can get a loan, because I think something's got to get done at Farmington for sure. I would be fine. I don't know how much money it gets us, but I certainly would be open to paying whatever we're paying for the portables, just keeping that payment, but rather than paying for portables, paying on a loan to do whatever we've got to do for the building there. So I don't know where we are in that discussion. I feel like we need to move one way or the other, because obviously if we're going to not have them, then that's going to save money. But I know as part of the budget, I figure that discussion's got to happen at some point here.
And typically for us, we have those discussions when we start looking at our capital budget. That's a separate standing. When we do the other funds budgets, there's going to be another set of budgets that are coming. When we're talking about the cafeteria, the federal funding, we're going to look at those budgets too. But also too, we're always waiting on to see what's going to happen with Shelby County's request to the county commission and our ADA share of that funding. I think that discussion is ripe for us. I know we're moving down those steps to talk about that and using that funding to accomplish those goals. I think it's time for us to make sure that we are addressing that need. So when we get ready to go looking at those funding streams, when we see how much we're going to receive from the county commission, I think it's time for us to do that. Okay, that moves us on to
Yeah, was that back to, and you tell me if this is not the proper place, and I will wait. I just, since we're talking about offsetting cost with athletic field maintenance, if there is a current field that is a project where the program and the current boosters are interested in looking at making a transition to turf from grass, and this is going to be offsetting some of those costs that they currently have. It's not currently in our CIP 5-year plan.
So I have, yes, sir.
So I'm trying to figure out, because I've never done that before. Like I know, in the past, we've moved things around that are already in the plan based on funding or urgency or changes of circumstances. But in this case, what do we need to do to identify adding it outside of the normal, September
So
meeting?
this is real easy. So based on conversation with you and the conversation y'all have had with people, when y'all come and say, hey, we're hearing from parents that this is a project that we would want, I go to the staff members. And so I go to the sponsors, the coaches, and say, hey, is this something, I'm hearing this, is this something that you want? They can always come up through us and ask the same things. So I've also talked to Mr. Bland to talk to our coaches and sponsors, say, hey, what are those things that we want to have? And we're already working with the plan to make sure that we are including those in our 5-year facilities master plan. And then what we'll do with that committee and also with the board is look at where does it fit in our hierarchy of needs. And so we'll have to have a conversation like when is this roof up versus when we want to turf the field. But we are going to make sure that that does get included into our 5-year plans.
Thank you. And because it's, again, I don't even begin to know what that would cost. So figuring out all that and then how it gets worked in into the timeline, and also the partnership opportunities, like I think chicken or the egg, like what's first? First, identifying the maybe need request. And so here we are. And I appreciate you walking through that because typically that's done kind of through the committee work, I feel like, unless something's identified by us by community or operations department usually brings it to us because it may be, to your point, something in a facility that needs to be addressed quickly. And so since it's kind of out of the normal cycle, but it's a budget conversation, I did want to ask that. And I appreciate you walking us
Yes.
through that. I've learned a lot going through this process, and I've been through this process several times.
Yes. So the goal, first step for us is any program coaches that want something or they want something to change in our facilities, they have to come to us. Now, typically we don't do, now turfing a field would be a higher budget item, but know that there are other projects that Mr. Cathy does a lot of projects for all the schools when they come to him with requests. And a lot of times there's a smaller projects below threshold of board that he's handling out of that general fund account when we talk about maintenance and capital. So things like carpeting libraries or, fixing window. There are things that he can do within schools. And we talk to our administration, we talk to our sponsors about requesting those changes. And those are things that we get done.
And it happens all the time, and that's something that, as someone that's out in the community and speaks to parents, and they come up and say, well, what about this? And I was like, well, did they ask for it? Well, did you ask for it? Well, did the person over the program ask the administrator or identify that to the department that needs to know that that's a thing they're interested in looking at?
Yes.
And I think that's important, and being responsive, but also, having the hierarchy of not only urgency of needs, funds, and all that goes into it. But we know for sure that we've been through situations where it's like, this is like, absolutely, we've been waiting a long time for this. And so we need to really keep our focus there. But we also know that sometimes things pop up and we said, you know what? During this time period, we'll put that on the list and we're going to see to it that gets done. And we've done Mr. Cathy in particular has done a fantastic job with that. But I just kind of wanted to walk through that because that has been a topic of conversation lately in the community, as you know.
And we also want to clarify that there are times that we can go beyond that list. We talk about, especially with partnerships, when we talk about a PTO, and I think Dogwood has done this multiple times where they want an outdoor classroom, for example, and they want that to be a big focus of their PTO fundraiser. A lot of times they will come forward with a request to Mr. Cathy, and a lot of times it's under the board amount, but sometimes it would be big enough to hit that list, where they will say, hey, we want to fundraise for this and we want the district to come alongside. That's always something that we want to encourage with our parent groups and make sure that we're supporting and providing the type of project at our schools when they identify something that they think would really change their school. And we've done this over time. So besides the staff talking to people and us then meeting with Mr. Bland, Mr. Cathy, and getting those things on the list that we bring before the board, there's always opportunity when we talk about partnerships for us to do special things.
Partnerships.
And private partnerships.
We've seen that, especially with athletics and arts, that's been something that we can, again, come together. And that's been one of the times where we've seen the timeline get rearranged. But,
and that's okay.
That's okay. But those are unique situations outside the scope of the typical budget.
So I'm going to draw us back to the budget because we've curtailed a little far off the budget. So if we can move on to academics, please.
Thank you.
What did we do?
Moved on to academics.
No, I'm saying, how did we get off the budget?
That's we're talking about capital.
Our
things.
capital budget.
Specific to the offsetting the cost of, that was where I was told to bring it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just
So we're getting this back. Yes.
So
So we're going to
gotta
get
get
it.
back
Okay.
Okay.
So our last category here, when we talk about changes from last year's budget to this budget, is on academics. And you can see we have some things that we're moving back to the general fund. So with our online academy, as you know, they have a completely online curriculum where we don't have a GMSD teacher that is assigned to them, instruct them every day. It's through this goal Pearson curriculum. So know that that's what that money was. We were including that in the ESSER funding, but to continue the goal program, we have to bring that over to our general fund. And then we have two aspirational things. One thing that was identified as part of our PLC initiative was time for our teachers and staff to really dig into the data and talk about how are we serving students. And so we do have a $140,000 increase in our substitute amount of money so that we can provide time quarterly for different groups. So a school, for example, could say fourth grade PLC is going to have this day where they're actually, after they've done the benchmark test, that they can go in and talk about different students and really make sure that that PLC process is continuing to grow in the district. This is especially important at the high school when you think about how many people they don't have common planning time at the high school level, and most of them have outside responsibilities where they're actually working with students in the evenings. This provides time during the school day that we can actually provide that PLC time for them. So that's the $140,000 for substitute costs for quarterly data digs. And then this $905,000 is our teacher laptop replacement money. So know that they won't be getting them this year, but we buy them during the fiscal year for the next year. So know that that's that $900,000 that you see there. Not necessarily aspirational. It's if we want to continue having devices.
computers.
Yes.
And when will the replacements happen? Will they be ordered in this
So
budget
we
term
will-
and then replaced the
That's correct.
following year?
That's correct. So
Because I know there's lead time.
yes. So we always are making sure that we are budgeting ahead of time, just like we did with the math textbooks. Even though we knew math textbook is for next year, we're going ahead and doing it during this year so that we can.
The fall of '24.
Yes.
All right, question about Goal.
Okay.
I've talked to Goal families. I've attended Goal, the pre-class, the homeroom I've attended, and so I'm hearing firsthand from parents the impact that it's making. And so I think it's a valuable asset to us, and I'm hearing from parents directly that are utilizing the service. I just want to make sure that it's able to be self-sufficient at this point. I want us to be able to offer it, but I also don't want it to be a drag on, from an expense standpoint. So I want to make sure our enrollment is.
That's correct.
I'm not looking to make money off of it. I just want it to make sure that it's able to pay for itself.
We are doing the exact same process for us. So for me, I want Goal to look like a standalone financial system within reason. If we have to provide a little support, I'm okay with that. But within reason, I want them to be a standalone, fully supported entity. So if we think about the number of students, the amount of revenue that they're generating for those students, we look at the salaries, we look at cost of curriculum. We're working with Dr. Fisher to make sure that we're setting enrollment goals for her team so that we say, hey, here's what it is for you to be self-sufficient and make sure we're able to provide this service. Because that's obviously something that we have to talk about. If our enrollment falls below a certain amount and it does become too difficult, that may be worth a discussion. But right now we're hitting that target number, and that's our objective. Are there other questions on changes from this budget to last year's?
The substitute increase is specific to teachers having time away,
That's correct.
not
to do
time
it.
off.
That's
or
right.
time out, rather.
This is specific time where for substitutes so that the teachers can be focused on data and student performance and interventions.
Do we feel like we're in alignment with our current Kelly rate comparatively? I mean, as we're drawing still from around the county like everybody else.
Yeah, yes, I believe, and that would be Ms. Stratton. I believe our substitute pay is adequate, and we have the staffing that we need to meet our needs.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the budget?
I'll just end. I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity for us and staff and just review some of the process. This is always difficult for us. We take requests from our principals, from our administrative team, from people at the schools, and we look at requests. And so I want everyone know this is always difficult for us because all of the ideas, all the requests are incredible and they could move, but it's always a challenge for us to identify those requests and come up with a balanced budget that we try to be conservative in our expenditures. But I do want to thank the board for this opportunity and know that if you approve this budget, this is going to be something incredible. When we talk about a 3% cost of living for our staff, what it can do for our teachers and staff, and this continues the $1,000 bonus that we have at the Christmas time. That's included in this budget because that's a carryover. So no, those are incredible benefits for our staff, especially when you think about financial times now. So this will be a wonderful thing that we can present to the community.
And I think the community needs to understand. We got it in our TSBA publication a couple of years ago. If I remember correctly, we have just in the municipalities alone, at the end of this school year, we're going to have over 300 teachers eligible for retirement just in the municipalities. If you throw in SCS, that number, they have 1,200 alone. And so we're up to around 1,500 teachers in this county that are eligible for retirement, and that number only goes up from there. We also have Lakeland, who is in the process of adding grades. So they will be hiring teachers for their 10th grade, and then and then 11th and then 12th. So they're staffing up. And so I think it's important to know that we are in a very competitive environment with a very shallow labor pool because everyone is familiar with the teacher shortage. I know the General Assembly is taking steps, trying to work with the Grow Your Own program, trying to get veterans involved. They're doing, to their credit, they're doing things to try to bring people in to teach. But this cost of living increase really helps us to stay competitive, because if not, we're going to be behind and we will have difficulty bringing in the best and the brightest. And so I think it's important to know, really the lay of the land when it comes to the teacher staffing situation in this market. It's, with SCS looking to hire, 1,200, just on their own for retirement replacements, that's a lot. And so I'm glad to see us. I know recruiting and retention, pretty much any time I'm talking about, that's number one, top of mind for me, because obviously we need great staff to teach our kids. And so I'm glad to see us do that. But I do think it's important that the community understands really how dire the teacher staffing situation is, and not just here. I mean, it's a nationwide issue, but at the local level, it is a real thing.
And there's not, as I like to tell people, there's not like a bench. Like if someone does leave us mid-year or even leaves us at the end of the year to get out of the industry or to go do something else or to move away, there's just not this just deep pool of folks to choose from. And so it's really important that we are putting our best foot forward from a compensation standpoint, so that we can identify those folks when we need them and to anticipate. I mean, we have people, I think, that even are planning on wanting to work here and they're not even ready quite yet to work here yet. And that's a good thing. That's a good problem to have. That's a quick question pertaining to the budget and just school safety overall. I think with the change, okay, so the school safety grant that we talk away, that's kind of gone away, but coming built in to the new TISA formula we continue to reference. Of statewide funding for education. And then also with the legislation, with, the governor's push, are there specific things that's affecting us additionally that we're not, hopefully we would have the money we've talked about the reserves, and school safety is top of mind for everybody. Not that it hasn't been, but it especially is right now. And so if there are certain things, I've heard from people all over the community that I only hear from every so often, and they're like, did you know this? Did you know you could get one of these? Did you, it's almost like as if somebody, when we have those rash of car break-ins in Poplar States, or when they go and pilfer through your stuff, up Dogwood Road, or, then it makes people think about it, and they're like, oh, well, did you lock your car? Did you have one of those things so no one could steal it? And those kind of things. And so I guess without saying too much, right now, how are we looking at the ability to spend or invest further in our overall safety program?
So we're looking at numerous ways that we can increase safety costs by I'll speak to one specifically. One of the things that Mr. Bland and Mr. Crump are looking at is a 3M product that goes on glass in buildings. So know that they're talking, and they're a different type of product. Say 3M, there are different products that do the same type of thing. When you're talking about, it's not complete bulletproofing, but you're talking about securing entrances. Those are things that we're looking at right now. They're doing an assessment of all those and working with different vendors. No, that's part of the governor's plan too, and when we get the details of that plan too, that's something that we're looking at making changes at our schools when we talk about just physical safety. Of course, we're blessed with our school resource officers that we have that are provided by the city of Germantown, and so the funding that they're talking about providing from the governors would not come through school districts. That would go from agency to agency. So they're talking about that going to police departments to provide additional support. So that if we see that funding, that will probably offset City of Germantown's costs that they're providing school resource officers for us. And I'm thankful for that they want to do that. In a lot of districts, they don't have that type of support from their community law enforcement, and they just can't find the staff willing to do that, to provide that service for them. There are concerns across the state about the amount of money that's proposed in the governor's budget. We don't know when you think about an SRO in every school and the amount of money that would take, that's going to be probably a substantial amount of money, more than what has been stated, but at the least it's going to offset costs for what districts, and maybe you have some that are shared between schools. But we are thankful that the governor is talking about putting in that additional money for security and safety for us. But there are other things that we're looking at, but typically we don't discuss all those different things that they're looking at.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing as we're done with the budget, let's
10
take a
minutes.
10-minute hiatus for people to get a snack or use the facilities, and we'll restart in 10 minutes. It is 2:23. We're going to start back at 2:33. Okay, guys, it's 2:32. We're gonna start in a minute. Grab your last-minute cookie. All right, is everybody ready? It is 2:33. I'm calling the work session back in order. We're to the second item on our agenda, revision of policies, first reading. Mr. Manuel.
So I'll just read from the rationale that the board received on these policies. So no, the first policy is 5.601, staff conflicts of interest. Ms. Beekman was working with Ms. Stratton in Human Resource. I know she shared this with you, Ms. Estes, to talk about this policy. And the policy was really stopping teachers, and the concern was you don't want to ever get in a situation where you have a conflict of interest and people's ethics could be called into question. So we do have a policy that prohibits like the teachers from tutoring their own students in their classes so that then they would be influenced to give better grades to those students. That's a challenge. But we didn't want to limit them from working with students, other students from different schools. We haven't had that. Or over the summer if they wanted to work with students and they could be paid for that. So this change to that policy allows that flexibility over those times where the students aren't assigned to them, they're not working with them, that they could provide extra opportunity for students to get tutoring. So that's policy 5.601.
I have a question on this that's maybe a little subject specific. When you're talking about musical instruction, band is a little different in that there are summer activities. How would this jive with a band director teaching in the summer?
This allows for that type of time because the students aren't actually assigned to them as far as it's not necessarily the extracurricular program as it is the assigning of grades to that program. So
Okay.
if they
I'm thinking like band camp starts in July, so would that cease at the start of band camp because that technically is instruction that leads into the school year?
This policy doesn't define that because it just says attending a summer instructional program or instructional camp at which the teacher is working during the summer.
So that's where.
It's also for private tutoring. It's not necessarily anything that is run through the school.
Here, sir.
What about lessons?
But that's what I'm saying. So if say we have a band director who can do private lessons with a clarinet, all right, so during the school year, that would be problematic. In the summer, that might be okay, but their summer would potentially end once instruction starts. And for band directors, instruction starts by band camp.
Right. This doesn't define it that way. So,
it doesn't define it
this
by band
doesn't.
camp?
No, this defines it as summer. So when we think about the terms and we think about our instructional calendar, that's what we would be defining as the beginning of that, not necessarily the beginning of that program or that extracurricular opportunity. If that was important for you one way or the other to define whether that could happen or wouldn't happen, I think you would need more specific language in here to define what that looks like.
I just don't want there to be any crossed hairs if one of our band directors, any of them, are wanting to provide
tutoring.
private lessons. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
There's a gray area, and I'm not saying it I don't know that it necessarily needs to be clarified specifically in policy, but if it could be clarified when discussed with the teachers in HR.
Yes, so for our interpretation, we were considering the school calendar that we were using to define students' instructional days, when they begin the school year, when they end the school year. So we were not considering those instances like band camps or things that were happening over this, because there are multiple groups that do things over the summer. We were not considering.
Even coaches do different types of training camps.
So we want to allow that opportunity for them to do that because we felt like there was a gray area with those types of camps, because there are numerous ones that do these types of camps where people can pay money and have childcare and attend those. We wanted to make sure that this was clear in those opportunities. Sorry. Joseph, you had a question about this.
Oh yeah, I was actually gonna say, so like during the year, would this prohibit like a band director type person from giving private lessons?
It would to their students. It currently does though, so this isn't a change in that.
I'd say though, because I feel like that's like an ongoing thing that we have.
So that's something that we need to address.
Yeah.
The challenge you always have. Yes, the challenge we always have here is, like I said, we want to avoid the issue of. It's not that we don't want the teachers to receive additional funding or sponsors from working with those students. It really puts them in a difficult situation, though, when you're providing grades to that activity also. So if you think about a math teacher and they're getting paid to tutor a student, so their grade improves in a math class, and then the student's grade doesn't improve, then all of a sudden we are in a difficult situation between that family, the student, and the teacher. They provided money essentially for a service the parents may not feel that they've received. So this has always been kind of a gray area for us.
I would also say there's an appearance perception aspect to this.
Oh yeah.
Perceived favoritism, perceived improvement in grades as not necessarily as a result of said tutoring or activity, but relationship with, outside of the classroom with said teacher. So there is that aspect of it that's why it's a conflict of interest, is you don't want to provide that even appearance of some type of favoritism.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with that. I think that's been manifest in like what I've seen in our program. Definitely concerns like that.
So one of the things we will make sure is, as we review this policy, just like we do when we change all of our policies, we push this out to staff and human resources, make sure that they do follow-up training to say what should be occurring and what shouldn't be occurring, and we'll make sure that we define those areas as far as what is summer versus what is not summer. But like I said, this is a board policy that for us, if the board felt like one way or the other that y'all wanted more specific language to open it, limit it, that's really your choice.
In the new section that was added about individual tutoring on, I guess it's 1, 2, 3, the fourth bullet point, do we want to limit that to when it's just for compensation? Because I know a lot of times coaches will work with a student after practice, and the way this is written, it's just totally not qualified. But if we limited, all the other ones have the provision that we just don't want you getting paid on the side. And this one, it just almost looks like we just maybe accidentally dropped on the first line after it says coaching/instruction for compensation.
I think that would be a very good addition for clarity. So
We're providing tutoring services before, during, and after school already, all day, every day.
Yes. So, Ms. Virginia, just for purposes for before the board meeting, at that fourth bullet, when it says individual tutoring or any types of coaching or instruction, and Ms. Estes, you said for
Compensation.
compensation. Yes, we need to add the words for compensation. Are there any other questions on staff conflicts of interest? Okay, then that moves us to our next policy, which is student records. So you can see the changes here, and just to read through the rationale that was provided to the board. Revisions are recommended to this policy in order to grant SROs access to student records and access to video footage when necessary to perform the function of an SRO's duties. Revisions are also recommended to include the Tennessee state law regarding non-custodial parents' rights to records. Revisions are also recommended to provide families more specific information regarding their FERPA rights. So know that this was an issue that we'd seen in districts across the local area, and we've seen this across the state and federally before. The challenges and concerns are about whether a video footage is FERPA document, and I think court cases support that those are FERPA documents. And so the challenge we had, and we have worked through this situation with our school resource officers, this is something that we provided with dispatch. They have had, and we still have access to our camera system, our SROs had access to our camera system, but the question was, they could access that in case of an emergency, but was it a violation of FERPA if they were just sitting on those cameras watching that? And so that's what this policy is trying to correct. That we do want the ability for SROs to monitor and look at material in a preventative fashion when we're looking at these camera systems. So this allows them to do that. Know that we do have an MOU that we've worked out with the city law enforcement to make sure that we are meeting these requirements. But we need to make sure that the policy reflects that. So this does, just to clarify too, this does not mean that the SROs have access to, hey, I want to see this student's grades for their math class. This is in reference to the cameras that we're looking at. Sorry, Ms. Estes, you're going to say something.
Yeah, mine's housekeeping. On page 5, line 35, change the word director to superintendent or his designee.
Yes.
It's probably going to be on all our great
We're gonna have all the- yes.
all our tombstones. Change the word director.
It's coming
And
from these
then
stock policies.
On
Yeah.
page 6, line 3, again, superintendent or
Or
his
designee.
designee.
Great.
One quick question about the bullet 5 on page 2, when it talks about scientific research. Just, can you give me like a quick example of what that would be and how often that happens?
Which one are you at?
When the school system enters into a contract or written agreement with an
I'm sorry,
organization.
sorry, I lost you. What page were you on?
Sorry, page 2, number 5.
Okay.
That would just stuck out to me. I was curious how often that happens and what kind of research that would entail. And if, I mean, I can ask you at another
No,
time. I don't want to put you on the
the
spot.
answer to your question is, since I have been a superintendent, once again, these are policies that are permissible,
Yeah.
allowable. Since I have been superintendent, I don't know if I'm aware, I guess Olveus,
Talking about survey students. Like a lot of times, graduate students will call and say, hey, do you mind if we survey this class?
Okay.
Use their scientific research for
yeah. So, Mr. Mack, sorry, could you come up to the microphone so that people can hear?
Sorry. So we do get requests from college students, graduate students to survey students. That's the scientific, that's what that's speaking about. They'll use that in their thesis or a paper they're doing
So
or research.
what type of information on the kids would they have access to?
They may not have, they don't have access to the information on students. They may just have a generic survey that they've created.
Okay.
Asking it, and those requests will go through a couple different departments, and they may or may not be approved, depending upon what information they're searching for.
But like I said, this is not common for us that I'm
Okay,
aware of.
That just struck me as a little weird, I guess is the right word I'm going for, that as a
Right.
parent, you might want some clarity on.
Yes,
who
and
may-
you would be provided the opportunity to,
Okay.
to not be a part of
weird
that.
maybe not the right
Um,
word, but.
Yes, well,
that
just
it seemed odd to me.
not something that you had seen.
Okay.
Yes, because I cannot think of, besides that example, any instances where, yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
a common occurrence.
Oh, yes, yeah, I forgot that one. Yes.
That was
No,
a contract.
Yeah, that was a good example. We did, but that was one that was pushed, but that wasn't going through the students themselves. We were sending that out to the whole community, but when we decided to change the school start times, we did a survey out to all of our stakeholders to get their feedback. Parents
So
included,
this isn't
yes.
something like somebody would, doing some research gets access to student information,
No.
like personal information and
No.
things like, okay, that was the clarity I was looking for.
Yeah,
Thank
they would not be receiving student identifying information
Okay,
either. They're
okay.
really just asking for a general.
Sorry to put you on the spot, that was,
I think it's good to know that it's not a common thing, that we do have to provide some clarity.
And based on the legislation that we're expecting,
Yeah, and I'll cover that,
Okay.
in the legislature. That's one of the bills that
but
we're
it'll
covering.
be
It's gonna talk about
relative
that.
to this policy, I think, and we may have to revisit it. I mean,
Correct,
Sooner
yes.
than later.
Maybe in the change heap, yes. But the main purpose for us today, and the changes we're recommending are for the SROs to have access to our camera systems.
I just wanted to say thank you, because this is something we've talked about. It's something, the SRO Corps, I'm gonna affectionately refer to them as. I know it's really important to them, and I'm really excited to have the opportunity to clean this up and be where we wanna be.
All right, moving on to item number 3, the budget amendments.
So, Mr. Kathy, I don't know if you want to come up to the microphone, but I'll lead us off. So, one of the things that we talk about and that we're proud of, we do have a standalone cafeteria account. And we've talked about how we built that reserve in our cafeteria account. And so I do want to clarify when you see that item of reserves, our reserves are not $1.1 million. That is for our cafeteria account that we're looking for that funds. That's specific to that reserve account. And so we do want to make sure that we're improving our cafeteria facilities there. So that's where this funding is coming from. And so this budget amendment is appropriating that money to do kitchen upgrades at Dogwood Elementary School. Mr. Kathy, is there anything you feel I missed in that?
No, it's the next item on the agenda, but that budget amendment is to move funds from the nutrition fund to capital for the purposes of the next item on the agenda, which is the Dogwood Elementary School cafeteria stage expansion project.
Or no, this one was the for
I'm
the
sorry,
kitchen.
for the school kitchen improvement
Yeah,
project.
this is for the kitchen,
Item
yes.
number 5.
Yes. Are there questions on this budget amendment?
So 3 and 4 go together. Wait.
3 and
I'm
5
sorry,
go
3 and
together.
5. Yes.
That's
thank you.
correct.
And
Okay.
just to clarify, that's money coming from the cafeteria reserves, not the,
Not the overall district reserves, yeah. It's a standalone account.
okay.
That's one of the exciting things that happens when we have a profitable cafeteria account. Okay, if we don't have any more questions on that budget amendment, we will go to our next budget amendment, which is number 25. First, I'd like to thank Missy and Ethan Constant from her team for getting us the Innovative School grants. And it was a lengthy application process that they had to go through. Much like you've seen a lot of our e-plan submissions, there's a lot of work that has to happen to get these approved. And so you see that reflected here. So, Ms. Abel, I didn't know if you want to come up and say anything about this, but thank you, Mr. Kathy. And don't go too far. You're coming up again.
So the Innovative School Models Grant is an initiative through the Tennessee Future Workforce Ready with Governor Bill Lee and the Tennessee General Assembly to award grant funds to each school completing this application. And we're just excited that we had our grant approved. Ethan Constant developed a very strong grant plan, and upon that approval, we now have our initial allocation that we need to spend this year for our aviation program that we are bringing to Houston High School next year. So you can see the money allocated for that, and that is to get electrical outlets equipped. The following year, we will end up purchasing the
simulator systems.
simulators. I was like, what's the word I was looking for? The simulators.
Yes.
But we need to this year, we need to go ahead and get the outlets and the electrical power set up for that. So we have money allocated for that. And then this is also a program for middle schools because we want our pathways to feed from middle to high school. And so we are purchasing a STEM curriculum for both Riverdale and Houston Middle with these grant funds. So I'll be happy to take any questions on the grant itself.
These grants, I remember last year, the General Assembly, I think they were offering, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Manuel, $1 million to high schools and $500,000 to middle schools. So is this all part of that?
Yes, it is. It's a four-year grant.
So so is this the first installment of that?
Exactly.
Okay.
This is We needed to spend some of the funds this year. That was part of the requirement of the grant. And since this is April, we have a plan to spend the initial part to get going.
Okay.
And then we'll be coming back again next year to bring the next part of the grant.
I can tell you I've heard from many parents the aviation program is in high demand. Obviously, that career is in high demand as well. And so I've had numerous parents ask about it, and so I'm glad that we're doing this. I don't know, long term where it's going to end up as far as what we're going to have, and what the money's going to be able to, how far it's going to carry us. I don't envision we're going to have a FedEx, 727 or 757 simulator in there.
No.
But I do think. So to the board members, if you received the TSBA magazine in the last week or so, they had a program. I think it was one of the schools over in Middle Tennessee. I can't remember which one. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, so yeah, Cleveland talked about theirs, and I was sitting there thinking like, wow, I'd love, hopefully ours is trending in that direction. I'd love to have something like that.
And the great thing is, our contact there, Superintendent Russell Dyer, is from this area. Was actually deputy superintendent in Carterville, so he's a hometown boy who we have direct contact with and have gone and visited and talked to. So, yes, that is something that we can definitely mirror.
I just wanted to say, as we've all been anticipating this, the legislators rather that we have met with, and especially last year when we were making our rounds, meeting with people face to face that don't necessarily represent our area, kind of getting to know folks on the education committees throughout the state. That was the overwhelming question. What are y'all going to do with your $1 million? What are you going to do with your $500,000? And we said, don't you worry. We have good plans. And I just want to commend Mr. Constant and your department for the work on this and identifying what those opportunities for employment are for our students and the best programs that we could bring on that would help them achieve that. And I'm really excited.
That is it for the two budget amendments.
All right, moving on to Dogwood Elementary School cafetorium stage expansion project.
I think I'd like to start at the beginning by talking about how this project came to you. This was really started at the school level. Dogwood and their PTO had a vision and a mission, and they may have aspirations of starting their own play and their own program. As you guys know, Dogwood students, as well as Farmington students and Forest Hill students, have participated in the Farmington Footlights program when they want to do their theater production or school play. One of the limiting factors that we had at the beginning of the district was facilities. Farmington had the facility. You're very familiar with Dogwood. Most of the board members know that facility is really not adequate to produce a play. So Dogwood came and they've raised money for this. They have $50,000 that they'll be contributing to this project, assuming board approval. The elements of this project are very similar to the project we did at Farmington. An expansion of the existing stage along with an upgrade in materials, lighting, sound system, control booth or panel, where they would have everything that they would need in order to do a play production. But also it will be a nice upgrade that will benefit the school in other ways for assemblies, performances, spelling bees, and the like of things that are performed in that area. So that is kind of where this began. We assisted them in getting a bid package together, putting all the elements in. The bid came back, and Tabor Grinder was the low bidder for the project. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I was just curious. I know in the past conversations surrounding this project, there were a couple of community organizations that were talking about participating. At this point, is it specific to PTO fundraising funds, to your knowledge? And
to my knowledge, the funds that were raised by PTO at Dogwood.
Okay. Thank you.
I was trying to tell, it's kind of hard looking at the schematics. So how much cafeteria space are they going to lose with the stage expansion?
They will lose some. It will come out into the cafeteria a bit. We've done the measurements and tables. It's not going to affect their lunches. We looked at that. Really, the main elements of the project are the ones that I hit with stage, lighting, sound, production booth. They will lose some. It will come out and will eat up some space in the cafeteria.
And then I guess pending approval, what's the time frame projection? Is this something that they can get done over the summer? I just wondered if this was going to go run into school time and how disruptive that might be.
No, assuming if this board does approve it, the plan would be to complete this work this summer.
Okay.
I'm kind of chuckling, but and I'm sure Vice Chair Ove could really attest to the lack of storage that school has, specific to that area. And I know that was part of some of the requests that had been asked, and being privy to this just now. Also, I know that the Communities Reach program not only utilizes the gym space, but also a lot of the cafeteria space as well. And I think that this is a wonderful opportunity to, one, take a 1977-ish space and bring it to the 21st century to the betterment of our students, not just for the purposes of performances, but just the ability to do other things there more effectively. That could just, when they host concerts, when they have, just like you said, spelling bee school events and everything like that, it's really the Dogwood Talent Show is something to behold. And I'm really excited about this. And to your point, our PTOs have a wonderful reputation of, when they put their mind to something, they're not afraid to go, hey, like you said before during the budget conversation, we'll walk beside you, we're going to do our part, we're invested in this, it's a need, it's a want, and we want to be part of it. And this is just another wonderful example of that. I know that everybody over there has really waited for this for a while and really thought a lot about it, and I'm so pleased at the partnership. So thank you for everything that you've done to help facilitate that.
Any other comments or questions?
And I'll just remark, I think that it also will bring, and I've talked about other facilities like the gyms, but I think having the stage there will bring parity with the other schools as well, because even though Riverdale's is in the old gym, they've got a huge stage, obviously Forest Hill, Farmington, so I feel like from a parity of our schools, Dogwood will have the ability to have the same experience. And it makes a huge difference just for choir concerts or anything of the sort. I know at Forest Hill, having the stage there for choir concerts, it makes a huge difference. And so I think that's a great thing for Dogwood. And yeah, I appreciate the work y'all have put in on that.
Okay, moving on to Dogwood Elementary School Kitchen Improvement Project.
So that was budget amendment. I think it was 23, but that's moving funds from the nutrition reserve over to capital in order to accomplish this. This was really Mr. Jones and his department worked with operations to put this together and reinvest some of those funds that we've been fortunate enough to build in our nutrition reserve and reinvest those in our kitchen at Dogwood. One of the, to put it nicely, one of the most poorly laid out kitchens that we have in the district. So the main elements of this project, the serving area would be remodeled in order to make it more efficient. There is new flooring, epoxy flooring that would go down in that kitchen area as well. The manager's office would be relocated in order to open the space up more. There's a new walk-in freezer and other new food serving equipment that would go in, new dry storage shelving, and it's going to involve a decent amount of utility rerouting and electrical work. No change in egress, no change in occupancy. That will stay the same, which helps with code. But those are the kind of the key elements, is giving that kitchen a much needed refresh and making it more efficient so it can continue to be successful. And if Mr. Jones wants to say anything more, he can. He oversees our nutrition program, and operations really just came alongside their department to assist them in getting this vision together and getting it put out to bid.
Just happy to see the much-needed renovation.
Yeah, Mr. Cathy, again, appreciate the work on this one. Can you, and this is somewhat germane, so I'll ask, just, I know obviously Forest Hill's new. We'll have a pretty new setup at Dogwood. Where are we condition-wise with our other schools, just so we kind of have an idea of where things are?
Yeah, I would say this is the worst kitchen that we have at Dogwood. It's by far the one that is the most in need of the renovation. But to your point, and you made a good comment about parity earlier, where we've got parity now with our preschool programs. We're at the beginning of the district. We didn't have the facility to do it at only at Farmington. Now we have the facilities where we can offer those programs. We're about to be there with our theater and our cafeterias. The other cafeterias that would be next in need of attention would be Farmington and Riverdale's cafeterias, or sorry, kitchens.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, moving on to Houston High School door hardware replacement.
This is, and I'll kind of start with where this came from. Originally, when we meet with our assistant principals and our principals, and this is first off a logistic challenge that they encounter each day. We have subs come into the building. Substitute teachers come in. We don't have a set of keys because we have such a crazy hodgepodge of hardware throughout our district that it's just a mess. A lot of it's not ADA compliant. And so on a day-to-day basis, what really happens at our schools is an assistant principal or someone with a key, a plant manager, has to go let a substitute into a room. Now, they leave that room on default lock for safety and security purposes. So as the door is being closed throughout the day, the door is locked. But all it takes is that substitute teacher going out for their lunch break or accidentally closing the door behind them when they go out to recess. Now they're locked out of their room and they don't have a key or a way to get in. So now we've got to try to chase down a plant manager or an assistant principal or someone to come open that door while they're trying to take care of their kids. So there's a logistics issue there. And also, a bit of a safety and security issue. You want your people who are caring for those classrooms to have access. So this proposal that I'm bringing to you, and one of the assistant principal's requests was, can we have a set of keys made where they're in the front office when the sub comes in for the day, they give us some collateral, license, something, so that we get our key back at the end of the day. We give the substitute teacher a key. They go, they do their work. That'll save our administration a lot of heartache and pain dealing with that, in addition to the other 1,000 things they deal with on a daily basis. And at the end of the day, sub comes back, checks out, signs out, gets their collateral back. We get our key back. So they've requested that we have a set of keys in the office for that purpose as well, so to issue out to our substitute teachers. So one of the things that this would accomplish would be just the logistics and safety and security of our schools. The other thing it accomplishes is it's another step towards ADA. This door hardware would be ADA compliant. It would be on our master key system that the district already has. And so we are getting proposals for the other schools as well. When we built Forest Hill, when we built Riverdale's addition, when we built the softball complex, the field house, this building, they're all on the same master key system. So we own that. We can have those keys cut. But the door hardware that pre-existed our district, it's a challenge. So we'd like to get it to a point where all of our interior doors are the same hardware, same key master system that the district owns, and that is ADA compliant. This would be a step towards that at the high school. We're getting proposals for the other schools. I don't know if those would reach to the board's threshold or not, but I want to be transparent with the board. The goal here is to get our door hardware consistent, ADA compliant, safe and secure, and at a point where we can get keys out to substitute teachers. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, so I'm going to cover this in just a little bit when we go through the governor's school safety bill, but one of the provisions for any school building constructed or remodeled after July 1st of this year, so Houston High School, when we do that, that will be part of, that would be included, at least for the new part. But the provision is include a door locking mechanism on each classroom door that allows the classroom door to be locked from the inside. So just making clear that what we're doing here, we're not going to have to go back and redo anything.
It does fit that definition. It has the intruder function on it, so it does fit that definition.
All right, thanks.
And once again, we have this amount of money already budgeted. We're not asking for, the board has to approve it because of the threshold for approvals, but Mr. Cathy already has this funding in his budget.
I really appreciate it. When we recently toured the high school as a board, this was one of the things that was identified as a need. And without, y'all know my Mr. Furley keyring jokes, but also with the ADA compliance, I mean, I'm not saying, because again, this is all inherited facilities, but it reminds me of like when a builder at the end of the thing is like, what do we have left over? And it's like this kind of doorknob and this kind of handle, and this is like, what? But the ability for the consistency and the safety aspects to me, I mean, I'm so excited not only that this is getting done and a priority, but that it's getting done quickly. I think that with the, just again, it's a big facility. It's a lot, I mean, you know, spacious, and as we do have admin running around in different parts of the building and SROs running around and plant manager running around, I think that it gives me frankly some peace of mind to know that people can access and get in their room when they need to. Again, that's been really top of mind to me, and I'm really excited to see this streamlining process take place for that reason.
All right, moving on, approval of grant of tenure to the recommended teachers.
Thank you, Mr. Kathy. Mr. Stratton, if you would come up and before we actually start, just explain to us, you typically do a really good job of explaining tenure for the board again and what it takes by state law for you to be granted tenure. If you would just give us an overview of tenure, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. So the GMSD educators that we are recommending for tenure consideration, they've served the required probationary status of working in a Tennessee public school for at least 5 years, and they have proven continued success as a classroom teacher by earning level of effectiveness scores of either above expectations or significantly above expectations within their last 2 years of serving on that probationary status. These level of overall effectiveness scores are determined through classroom and professional evaluations, as well as student achievement and growth data. And as a reminder, tenure is what's called an employment status. So all teachers in GMSD are either on a probationary or tenure status. And tenure provides due process for teachers during discipline or dismissal cases. In addition, tenured educators have continuing employment with GMSD unless they're being dismissed from cause. And most importantly, earning tenure is one of the highest professional distinctions that an educator can earn in a school setting. And while the Tennessee state law outlines tenure eligibility requirements, the granting of tenure is a local Board of Education decision. So for your review and for the public's review, we have an outline of our process for identifying those educators who are tenure eligible, as well as the names of the folks that we are bringing to you for your consideration. And the GMSD Human Resources Department, along with the support of all 6 of our principals and Superintendent Manual, are excited to bring you these 24 educators for tenure consideration.
And also, as is typical with this, the board will have this agenda item on our April meeting, but then we will have the celebration and invite those teachers to be recognized during our May meeting, during the recognition part of it, but they wouldn't be here for that one voting. Yes.
Every year I point this out because I think it is important for people in the community. You can earn tenure or achieve this status in multiple school districts. So just because someone's been tenured somewhere else doesn't mean that they're necessarily tenured once they come to us.
Correct. Tenure does not travel from district to district.
There's been sometimes some remarkable educators who have achieved that status, and at this point, and since our origination, multiple up to 3, maybe even more local school districts in Shelby County over like a 30-40 year time frame. And I think that there's still a specific local school district association, and like you said, what we require in order to get there. You know, someone that's been teaching in the classroom for 25 years and might have been either SES or former MCS or, you know, along the way, and then they come to us, they may achieve it in a different route than someone who, say, is fresh out of school and then earns the time. And I think that for those people, they ought to have some special award just for, but I think a lot of times people associate it with brand new people, and then we can have people that have been in the industry at that level for a long time that are new to us that get to also earn it within our district, and that's really fun to see too.
Any other comments or questions on the grant of tenure to recommended teachers? All right, moving on to nominations for the 2023 TSBA Volunteer and Student Awards.
Ms. Crowder will read through these nominations for if you. So you have the little synopsis on each of the individuals. So if you could read those for us. But just I'll give the overview. So every year, Tennessee School Board Association has an award programs for us, and so they ask school districts to nominate a volunteer of the year, and they also have a student award that you can nominate students for. And so, of course, we reach out to our schools, organizations, administration, and ask for nominations, and then we review that list, and we make a recommendation for each of these for the board. But the board does have the responsibility to vote for these individuals in order for us to push that on to the Tennessee School Board Association. So, Dr. Chatham, when we go to our retreat, you'll be overwhelmed. It's exciting to see all the school boards there. You realize how incredible a system you're a part of. But it's also special when you can have people from your district too receiving these awards. And we were lucky enough to have that, I think, with Bonnie Lee one year, one overall for the state one year. So we're hoping again that we can have more nominees do that. So at this time, Ms. Crowder, would you be able to read the bios for us for the people that are recommendations?
I would be delighted to. We have wonderful nominees to present to you today. For our TSBA Volunteer Award recognition, we suggest Nabiha Huda. She is an exceptional individual who deserves to be recognized for her outstanding volunteer work as the PTO president of Dogwood Elementary School. Her leadership positions across several PTOs, including the district GMC PTO, Houston Middle School, Houston High School, are a testament to her dedication to schools, our schools, and this community. She's an unwavering volunteer who is always ready to take on the tasks that need to be done, according to many administrators in the district. Often the unsung hero behind the scenes. And her presence in the schools is a constant source of support and inspiration to all of those around her. She also serves on a new committee at Dogwood this year called the Dolphins Belong Committee, where she works tirelessly to make DES an inclusive and welcoming environment for its diverse student body. She collaborates with the principal to ensure, for example, that Muslim families in the school are feeling valued and seen. Her volunteerism has also been recognized several times in GMSD, and we are excited to nominate her today for this TSBA award recognition.
Okay, would you also read us the student?
Yes, Sarah Hockman is an 11th grader, and that's part of the requirements of this award. It goes to an 11th grader because the award season, it moves into next year. She was nominated by her school administration, so Mr. Taylor and his team knew exactly it was a very quick answer. She is a very strong leadership background. Reading through her resume, it was incredible. She's held various positions in the BBYO organization, and she's also held regional leadership positions, including international leadership positions. She's attended an international leadership seminar last summer in Israel, was an embassy captain in IC Leadership, IC Press Corps, and a host at the International Convention in 2023. She's actively involved at Houston High School in the Key Club, the Jewish Student Association, which she co-founded and co-presided over. In addition to her leadership roles, she's participated in various community service projects, including Riverdale Raider Theater, Houston High SGA Trunk or Treat. She's received numerous academic awards and honors, including being a member of the Honors Academy and having an unweighted GPA of 4.0 and a weighted GPA of 4.54. 8.48. She has excelled academically, receiving a perfect score on her ACT, as well as high scores on the PSAT and her AP exams. She spent a year studying abroad in France and was awarded the French level C1, the highest honors from the class council. Hopefully, I could go on because there was a lot in her resume. So this is just a summary, too. A wonderful student deserving of this recognition.
So we have reached out to these individuals and have asked them to come for our recognitions at the board meeting, but we hope that the board will approve these for our TSBA awards.
Thank you. Our actual, I guess, awards that we do, our people have historically done very well as they move on. So I feel confident that these two are solid candidates to go all the way.
Any other comments on these? All right, moving on to further business.
Before Mr. Curry goes,
Okay.
We do have, I know that there's multiple business items. One thing I just wanted to bring to your attention, we did not discuss it during the work session here, but it's going to be on the business meeting, is the board does have to approve the math textbook purchase itself. Even though you approve the adoption, the financial piece of that, you have to approve the purchase. So that will be an action item for the board that's going to be on the agenda because it's over the threshold for my approval purposes. So know that you will see the math textbook adoption as an agenda item. So that's all I had for you to see in further business.
Okay, and I think we have two other further businesses. So Angela, go ahead.
I've spoken to a few of you individually, but I'm going to request that for our May agenda that we might consider, because I am planning to put in an application for the TSBA District Director position for the Delta region, which, as you all know, is the region of our state school board association for Tipton County, Fayette County, and all of the districts that are in Shelby County. The current person's term is up. It's a 3-year term, and as a previous termed school board member, committing to 3 years was something that I wasn't ever really at a place where I go, oh yeah, that's going to work out with my timeline. And now I feel like it's a perfect opportunity. And in order to go through that process, I have to have endorsement of my board. So if y'all would see fit to make that happen, I would like to, I've got to turn that in by July 1, the application process itself. But if we could do that at the May meeting, I would be most grateful. And it kind of all started too. They asked me to be on TSBA, and the current president came to me and asked me to serve on the committee to help find the new person. I was like, what if I want to be the new person? And then I talked to the previous 3 district directors of our Delta region, and they were all very encouraging. And then we know that Dr. Dale Viox is the incoming president-elect who serves on Arlington School Board for TSBA, and talked to him a little bit about kind of the role itself. And the folks at TSBA are very encouraging. It doesn't mean I'll get it, but I'm at least at a place in my boardmanship where I'm excited to at least attempt it and try. So I would appreciate that consideration.
Is May the time that would be most beneficial to you, or can it be something that we add to our April meeting?
We could certainly add it to the April meeting. I just wanted to give time in case. I mean, it's part of the application process, and I know we've got a lot going on, so I'm mindful of the timing and future agendas, which we're not always. We know some things that are happening in May and June, but I mean, I certainly wouldn't discourage it to be.
Do we have any reason not to just go ahead and put it on the April agenda?
No, I think that's very exciting. We're
going to need plenty of time for her to wash all her cars just to get the
That's
endorsement.
true. That's true. We'll just line them up in the back parking lot right here.
I'm kidding.
Last thing you want me to do.
Fine doing it in
there's some
April.
other things that maybe would be beneficial to y'all, but I don't think that's going to be one of them. I know my limitations. Thank you.
If
I
I'm
appreciate that.
comfortable with going ahead, if everyone else is comfortable going ahead and adding it to the April meeting, because we really don't know what May will bring, and I'd rather go ahead and
Get it knocked out.
have you feel endorsed.
Okay, well, man, I already do, but I really appreciate that melody. Thank you.
All right, and Brian or Mr. Curry?
All right, I guess, and before I get into this, just kind of heads up for everyone. I believe that we should be pursuing the TSBA Board of Distinction recognition. And so, looking through the checklist, we've done most of the things. There will be a couple of things that we need to have done. One of those will be to have outside evaluations performed. So I've reached out to the chairman of the Lakeland Board, Laura Harrison. She has agreed to come evaluate us during our May meeting. And then we'll have to see. It has to be from two separate districts.
Didn't we have a Lakeland person evaluate our meeting?
That was just part of, there's a board, that's a part of a level where you go observe another board
Right.
meeting.
It won't qualify for that as well?
As far as I know, because it's a separate, because you don't have to provide a report. So when they come in to do the evaluation, the board evaluation, their TSBA provides a form that has to be filled out.
Right, I've done it.
Yeah, so like when Michelle came, she was doing it as part of development of as an experience, not as
Right.
an evaluation.
And same thing with Jeremy. I think our board member Burnett last month.
Okay.
I think similarly. he
Interesting,
was
because
doing-
I did provide my report to Collierville.
Yeah, I mean, and so I think I was going to reach out to, if I'm just.
Yeah, go ahead.
if I said it. First of all, this is something that, quite frankly, we had all the boxes checked last year. We just didn't go through the process. We had a lot going on. And I would encourage, once we get this done, that we would include board member Landers in our celebration because we were there under her tenure and tutelage. But this is the new current board, and we certainly have the qualifications to get to that place. And I think it's really important for us that we go through that process. And so if we have to have people come, I know that Brian, you said you reached out and have one locked up, and it has to be done again by a certain timeline. So there's a couple other board members I was going to reach out to see if they're scheduled. Our thing is a lot of local school boards meet the same day we do. So there's a couple that may be different than us that would be specific to our May meeting that I'm going to ask would they come and do that for us, which will give us our 2 checks.
Yeah, like last year, I went to a Lakeland board meeting to observe, but I didn't fill out a form. I was there because I was part of the TSBA to try to, as an experience, I think, attend another board meeting, not to provide an evaluation. So I was there, and I just went and observed.
So when you're doing it for level 4, you actually have a form you have to complete and
Correct.
So-
So mine was like for level 2 or whatever. So I didn't
Okay.
have a form to submit. And so I believe with board member Childs and Burnett,
they're
they
just
weren't.
doing level 2. They're
they-
not
yeah,
up to
correct.
level 4.
Correct.
Okay.
As far as I know, they weren't doing an evaluation for that.
But
But anyway,
That's my understanding too.
Okay.
But their board chair, Laura Harrison, again, has agreed. And so unless something changes, she'll be here at our May meeting. And then we'll just have to see. And then after that, we should be good to go. I think we meet all the other requirements for Board of Distinction. And quite frankly, I think we should be recognized by TSBA for the work that we do. And so I think that'll be a well-deserved honor for this board.
Agreed. Okay.
All right, so I've got sorry.
Ms. Subramani, yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, Vice Chair Oaf. I want to remind about the request for evaluation of the Tipton County Board of Education for the June meeting, and we have to RSVP to them. So
Do you remember off the top of your head what day that was?
It was the 6th. I think now it's the 13th.
6th, but I think it's 13th now. We have our board meeting on June the 6th. So
I had originally offered to go before we made our June 6th change. And then now that they've made the change to the June 13th, I can't do either.
And it has to be a level 3 or higher.
Yes,
doesn't it?
level 3 or higher board member. Yes.
Okay. I'll communicate with you
Sure.
afterwards.
Thank you. I just want to remind at this time.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Curry.
Okay, so we're going to go through, as we've been doing here lately, a legislative update, and then I'm going to roll into one other item that I have as a result of legislative updates. So we're going to look at 3 bills only, but I am going to show them on the screen, and if you want to follow along on your computer, we can. These are going to go probably in order from least complex to the most complex, and there's action items, I think, for us on all of these, so it's one reason I wanted to go ahead and cover these, so we had situational awareness. The first one is going to be House Bill 782. This has passed both, I think this has passed both. Anyway, let's see. There might still need to go to the Senate. No, I think we're good there. Anyway, this bill is this passes, it will go into effect immediately. So at least one grade level in each public elementary and middle school shall schedule 5 days during each school year to highlight age-appropriate financial literacy concepts, either inside or outside the classroom. The financial literacy concepts must include, at a minimum, earning income, spending, saving, managing credit, and investing. The DOE will develop guidance to assist the elementary and middle schools in implementing this. The commission shall compile a list of modalities and materials utilizing the concepts outlined above that may be used. This is where I think I wanted us to be aware. The commission shall strive to select modalities that are available to schools at no cost. That you can strive, but that doesn't mean that you're going to achieve. So we could potentially have a cost here at some point. I don't know, hopefully not. That we're encouraged to adopt a policy for that, so we can look at that. But this does take effect immediately, and it applies to the 23-24 school year. So we'll have to figure out, I guess, Ms. Abel, how we want to, and that you may have been aware or not, but anyway, we'll have to figure out how we want to do this. But I wanted to bring, there could be a cost if the department is unsuccessful in finding modalities at no cost.
So the biggest change is that this is including elementary.
So yeah, at least one grade level in each public and middle school. So
And middle,
So
because the high school is already
yeah, I think the high school already has a course, and
required.
I think
It's
yeah. So, but this is elementary and middle. So again, I don't know what that's going to look like necessarily, but I did want to bring it to everyone's attention.
I could bring my checkbook and they'd say, "What's that?"
Yeah.
I guess
But I like it.
between the hour and a half of,
Whatever, when,
I-
what
I
hours
don't-
of the day.
Recess and, yeah.
I get a little irritated when they add more because they don't ever take anything away, and our days are only so long. So at what point, where is this supposed to fit? I mean, can we count it?
That's another additional.
Right. So again, I know I just, what gets sacrificed is, the things that they
Tested.
want to retain them for. While I appreciate the desire for our children to have financial literacy, we do address that in high school with a semester-long class. I happen to know that because my junior's taking it right now. And social studies addresses it. That's true. Okay. It looks like a problem. Looks like a solution looking for a problem here. That's fine.
And there is, I'm not going to pull it up here, but just for awareness, there is a bill that is being heard. They reopened education administration because of a bill. It was a caption bill, but essentially it's going to require a semester's teaching of Tennessee history somewhere between grades 5 and 8, beginning in the 26-27 school year. So that's coming. So we'll have to plan for that. Luckily, we've got some time, but that's coming. I do. It is, 1170, Senate Bill 1177. They reopened, here, I'll just pull it up while we're talking about it. They reopened, it was a caption bill, and they reopened the committee, but here, I'll just pull it up here. Beginning in the 26-27 school year, each LEA and public charter school shall require students in grades 5 and 8 to complete one semester of Tennessee history. So I know I know that I know my fifth grader is doing some Tennessee history because she was the beloved lady. I should remember her name off the top of my head. Over in the Living History Museum that we had at Forest Hill. But anyway, so I know that they're doing that, but I don't know if it's a semester's worth. But anyway, just know. But that's coming down the line, I'm sure, for 26, 27. So start planning now.
Okay. Just from an operational standpoint, something I appreciate that's 25, what'd you say, year?
26, 27.
Okay, school year.
Yeah, so.
So
it'll be
in
here
the
before you
event
know
of that, because I'm already seeing going that they don't do that now in those grades, so something would have to change. Would that change what the state standards obviously would have to align?
What you're going to see is this is going to have a ripple effect.
down,
You're going to
major.
have the state school board have to pass a policy, and they're going to have the Department of Education come up with the protocols and programming. They would have to add standards. They'll have to choose curriculum. I mean, there's going to be a whole, just like you said, a solution looking for a problem. There's going to be a whole domino sequence that happens from each of these where we're going to get guidance from the department.
Where we're in the middle of them seeking input for standards for social studies as we speak. Right now, we're living it. It's live. I've been sending people to it, tell them what you think, and so maybe they did.
Yeah, I think the window's closed, but here's
But
the
I mean,
problem.
that's what I'm saying. The
yeah,
process is already underway.
with this passing, they're going to have to relook at those standards because there's no way they're going to do this on top. Well, it would be unfortunate if they chose to do this in addition to the standards already in place for social studies. This cannot be an additional social studies class for one semester for each of these.
And that's probably why they've got it 26, 27, but just always, it's this General Assembly's passing things that they don't even think about. It's just,
Willy-nilly. You just like throwing these things out there to us, don't you?
Hey,
There's no one that loves Tennessee history or wants it to be taught more than this lady right here. But like you said, in addition to, and flipping the card over in order to do it, I just wanted to appreciate, operationally speaking, from a state level down to us standpoint, what that might look like. And y'all have told me that they're ready, pretty much have to just reinvent the wheel all the way around.
and it was Nancy Ward. That's who my daughter was over there. I know Arkansas history, Tennessee history. Anyway. All right, so the next bill we're going to look at is Senate Bill 1443. I alluded to this earlier, so we'll go through this. The amendments, they made the bill. Amendment 1 and Amendment 3 were the ones that made the bill, so we're going to go through this because there are some immediate requirements, or short-term, that we'll have to get ready for this bill. So this bill is dealing with surveys, parental opting in versus opting out. So I'll just go through this. So we are going to have to probably do something in our policies. I'm sure TSBA will help with this, but we will have to allow a parent or legal guardian access to review all surveys, analysis, evaluations prior to be administered to the parent or legal guardian's child. Require the LEA to obtain the written, informed, and voluntary signed consent of the parent or legal guardian, or if the student is 18 or older, before they participate. But there's a little caveat here. It does not apply if the full survey analysis or evaluation is related to classroom instruction of a curriculum and the survey analysis or evaluation is distributed to students as a method of evaluating the effectiveness of an instructional curriculum. So I think we had some concerns about like AP research and how that, I think we're good there. But I think to the point Dr. Chatham was looking at when we were going through the policy, something like that, whatever, if there was a scientific research, I think that's going to have to probably be where they would have to opt in. All right, here's going to be the thing that the district's going to have to somehow technologically get straight. They're going to have the ability not only for this but for the next section. They're going to have the ability to opt in and opt out at any time. So it's going to be very fluid. And so a parent might opt in for something and then turn around and opt out. Well, the somehow someone's going to need to know at the district level if I have now opted out, because you can't assume that if they've opted in that that's going to be the case. So somehow we're going to have to do that, and I expect that there's going to be a technological investment there, that we're going to have to come up with a system because we have so many students. It'd be different if we only had, a few hundred students. We've got close to 6,000 students. So there's going to have to be a way, if there's a status change, that the school is aware that there is a change in status. That way we're not in a situation where, they're in a classroom and, I've opted out of this. So I don't know how but we want to start thinking about that. And that's why I'm bringing this to you today as kind of as an urgent matter, because it's something that I think we're going to have to work towards here pretty quickly. All right, so that's dealing with surveys. And then, yes. Parent legal guardian, 18 years of age, signed consent before the student receives or participates in any or all the health services provided by a coordinated school health program. A student's parent legal guardian may withdraw at any time before they participate or receive in the health services. Now, there is an amendment that talks about screenings. We'll look at that. Screenings are still going to be an opt-out. So health, like vision is opt-out.
Vision and hearing is opt-out.
Yeah, this is all everything else will be opt-in. So I don't know coordinated school health. I don't know where that is versus, what might be different there. I'm not, because I know the lines, like for me, I look at it overall big picture, but we'll talk about it because that's in another amendment. All right, so a student, parent, or guardian, all right, same thing. This is dealing with the student to receive instruction of a sexual orientation curriculum or gender identity curriculum. Well, I'm not aware of there being such a thing, but if there was, then I guess they would need to sign a consent to that.
I thought that was a prohibited concept.
I don't know.
And why is it being addressed in law as though it isn't?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So anyway, this was a section that I don't.
That'll be easy.
Yeah.
It didn't exist for us.
Yeah. Okay, and then, and then if a student's parent does not consent to receiving instruction of a sexual orientation curriculum or gender identity curriculum, again, I have no idea what that is or what that would even look like, they shall be excused and not penalized for grading. But again, I don't think that's applicable. It shouldn't be applicable anywhere in Tennessee. All right, this is the one that's also going to impact us immediately. A school shall not allow a student to become a member of a club, organization, or allow a student to participate in any activity of a club or organization unless the student's parent or legal guardian first provides consent to the student's membership or participation in a dated written consent. And as you see there, this all takes effect July 1, 2023. So again, I think, and they did stress, Representative Love during the committee hearing on this when he asked about the paper, and they said, no, this can be electronic. But again, I know dealing with development at work, this doesn't happen overnight. So I wanted to, have district, the staff think about how are we going to implement this. And it could be through Skyward or something, but anyway, that's going to be a requirement. The law doesn't say anything about, because I will tell you, I don't want to sign a form for every club my kid is in. I just don't want to do it. So I would love, here's a general, leave me alone. I don't know if technologically we're going to be able to do that, but this will be an issue, and I'm afraid of. How do you, I guess they're going to have to monitor there in the club, because if you're allowing people to attend that don't have the consent, then that's an issue there as well. But again, this is going into effect. I don't know, the House is running behind. It's going to pass. It's passed the Senate. It's going to pass the House. But it's coming. So I wanted to make everyone situationally aware of this, and from a policy standpoint, we might have to do something, but I'm thinking from execution that we'll have to get ready for this.
So something like a OAS that previously was an opt-out will be an opt-in, which is bully prevention program. And then we get to, I'm trying to think of another example, I really don't. Then we get, so last Friday when I was at TSBA training, I brought this up. And first of all, most of everybody in the room was like, what are you talking about? I said, oh, this is happening, by the way. And TSBA is looking for clarification on, can you do like an all-encompassing parental like approval or consent for clubs, or if it has to be like individual basis. I mean,
Yeah, and that's, hopefully they'll provide us clarity. It'd be nice if we could provide the club list and have parents sign off and say, are you okay with your child joining any of these clubs? And then it would be nice if we could have an opt-out, like if there was one that you didn't want them to be, that you could say, I don't want my child to be in the following clubs. Hopefully that would suffice, because that is opting in to the club. You would have the list, then maybe that would keep us from having to have numerous applications, but I think would meet everybody's intent.
And
But
there's-
we'll start looking for logistics
And there's
pieces
no
of how.
board, a state board doesn't have to promulgate rules for this, so this is going to be, this is the law, and it sounds like we're gonna have to figure out how to implement it.
Yeah, my concern is that this is written so broad that if you have a student who just wants to attend a meeting and see what a club's about, their parents they're gonna already have to have the form signed to even just go and see what it is. They may never wanna come back,
And that might be part of like the registration, like the very first night when you do that, like let's just go ahead and get all the opting in, and then if a kid wants to, whatever club they want to sign up for when it comes to club sign up, and Mr. Offerman can talk about that. That happens right after school starts, but there's that period before school where parents they receive the schedule and they do all that. That might be a time to do that, but that's something we're gonna have to think about. But we're gonna have to think about it quickly because it is coming.
Mr. Opperman, you've been patiently waiting.
So first of all, kind of to that point, it is sort of like a hodgepodge right when school starts. Like there's these kind of club fairs in the lobby, so it's not like a super organized thing. It's kind of like the students put it together and run it. So that's definitely a concern. I was gonna say my big concern with this, it seemed like the wording seemed to say like attending any club event you would need certification. So like how would that work for something like if I wanted to go watch the International Extravaganza? Would I need a form for that? Because that's technically a club. Yeah. Or like a lacrosse game because that's a club sport. Like how do these things work?
Well, and the legislature was trying to address one issue, but unfortunately they can't single out a particular issue without impacting everyone. And so every club level here is going to be impacted because,
Because they want to target specific areas
That's
that they can't target without looking like
that's correct. Yes.
what they are.
Legally, they can't.
Right.
Yeah, legally. So, if you have one club, you have to have them all. And so that's where this is coming in.
Like I guess what I'm getting at is like we're gonna have to make sure like to get ahead of this as far as like if we want these events to happen next year and have students able to go to them, we need to make sure this is like thought through and like addressed before it's like the week of and then there's an issue.
I do like the idea, and logistically, there's some difficulties here, but just reasoning-wise, I don't have the problems with this that seem to be expressed by the rest of you guys. But just moving forward, I do like the idea of, hey, here's a list of clubs at the beginning of the year, yes or no, sign off, you're done for it for the year. That really seems to take a lot of just can you go visit a club, there's still logistical problems like with viewing an event or sporting event or something like that. But that seems like if that would work, that would be a pretty easy way forward. That would be the least painful.
my only concerns have been logistical ones specific to this legislation because I know that my kid's going to be the one that wants to go and try it all out. And I want to just go, yes, all of the above. I was thinking about this while you were just talking, Board Member Curry, and then even Board Member Opferman about, and I don't know how this works, so that's why I'm asking this as an example. So when we register and we sign up and they ask for like consent to be in publications or consent to, like be on social media, that's a list of information that we have for all students. And I know that sometimes those have even been in conflict with each other, and I'll just use this example. Registration, it was kind of like a catch-all. No, I don't want my student to be on any GMSD social media. But then they went on an event and they marked yes, they could be. And so it was like, wait, but we can for today, but we can't for every other day. And so I just want to make sure whatever we figure out, that may be the type of way that we can identify that, like you said, maybe through Skyward or something, where it's already a portal that we're accessing, parents are already accessing with that information. Or
My struggle with this is we get to the down and dirty of it on club days and teachers managing who's supposed to be there and who isn't. And when that changes, who's supposed to be there and who isn't, and how are they supposed to kick those kids out? And I think back to my growing up. My parents had no clue what clubs I was in and didn't care. I don't know what clubs my kids are in. I trust them to make those selections because they're old enough to make those decisions for themselves. None of our clubs are detrimental to students, period. So that's kind of, I've got a little bit of fire in my belly about this because it's going to put a huge burden on teachers, and the blowback's going to be at the teachers and the administrators. That's where the blowback's going to be, because then they're the ones having to deal with the kid that's not supposed to be there, or the mad parent because the kid was there and she didn't realize or he didn't realize that kid wasn't supposed to be there. And then they'll have to deal with the administration. So there's more to it than just signing a form. There's a human factor here. And I don't like that it's going to be putting a burden on our teachers and our administrators. That being said, if it's the law, it's the law. If there is a way, because it can be an opt-in, opt-out situation throughout the year, how are we going to communicate that as the year progresses? And my other concern is, what if a kid wants to create a new club and we're 2 months in?
And that happens.
And it happens
Dr.
every
Pepper
year.
Club.
The Dr. Pepper Club.
Dr. Pepper Club.
Board Game Club was new a year and a half ago. That makes for challenges. How do we create a club? And then do we have to advertise that out to all parents, and all parents then have to sign off on that one new club?
As I expressed before, concern, again, I feel like it's logistically with negative impacts. We already struggled to find teachers that have to sponsor wonderful clubs that our students, found, because of just their personal time constraints and commitment to that. And to make it more difficult, I don't know what the accountability requirement's going to be. I don't know how do we there's not. So it's like, this is what you're going to do. But what happens, like you said, the instances where it gets tricky or gray area, how do we even put that in? How do we even establish how we're going to handle that from, I guess, a standpoint of any reprimand or repercussion, or, and then who's that, like I expressed in the last meeting when we talked about this legislation, to me, the overall deterrent, I just feel like the negative impact on clubs in general is my concern, because I want to make sure that our kids have access to the clubs, and I don't want to make this so that we have less clubs, which is my fear that this may create.
Yeah, I think this could have a chilling effect, because the teacher is not obligated to be a club sponsor, and they might just decide and throw their hands up and say it's not worth it. And that, at the end of the day, we've not done anything for our students. And I guess to Dr. Chan's point, I want to make sure I'm clear on the record. Parents can, I've never had any objection to parents having input on this. It's the logistics of how this is going to work is going to be a nightmare, especially at our 1,900 student high school. It's going to be a nightmare to do this. And so, I think, we do what we can, but I don't want. They didn't think through, and I expressed to legislators the hey, how is this going to work on this, saying, like, you need to think about this. Anyway, I did not receive any reply. So, again, we're just going to make it work, but we know today it's going to happen, you know, April 20th, so we've got time, but there will be districts that they probably don't know, and then they're going to come into August and they're going to be surprised. I think fortunately for us, we pay attention, and so you know, we're well out ahead of things. But I did want to make sure we were aware. There isn't the other Second Amendment. While we were looking at it, it defines the minor student. There's a legal definition there for minor student, and then the section that I mentioned earlier, a parent or legal guardian who wishes to excuse the student from participating in health screening as part of a coordinated school health program must submit a request in writing to the nurse, instructor, counselor, or principal. So the screening is vision, dental, blood pressure, hearing. So those are opt out, and the reason that was the case. The sponsor of that amendment, Representative Haston from Perry County, he made it very clear that in rural areas, a lot of times this is the only health care that they have access to, and that if you did that, you were going to be removing health care for, you know, kids who need it the most in areas that are underserved. So credit to the General Assembly for keeping that in there. So we're fine on that. So any screenings, but we do have those. So we're not gonna that is still going to be an opt out for us. So anyway, that is the 1443. So I don't know if there's any further discussion, but I did want to bring that one to the board's attention.
That's certainly going to require some good communication on our part. That's an understatement.
Yeah, and you can see on this one, 1443, again, it is, I guess it passed the House. Oh, okay, it did pass the House. Sorry, I was thinking. So it passed the Senate. Yeah, because they substituted that's what they did. They substituted. So there's say the Senate. You can't have. There's only 33 in the Senate. So yeah. So this has passed. This one's on its way. All right. The Governor's School Safety Bill. Senate Bill 274. All right, so there's a lot going on with this one. It has passed both houses, so we're going to go through the Senate amendments. This will, and this is the largest one. This one makes the bill. There's a lot going on here, 16 pages. I'm not going to go through all these. I'm just going to talk about one that we had. I'll go through. There were some concerns about one part of this. Safety plans and security systems, we shall adopt a district-wide school safety plan. We've been well ahead of the curve. I feel, I'll tell anyone who listens, in our district, our safety plans are top-notch, and our partnership with GPD is top-notch. So most of this is going to really, we're already doing this. I think we've set the bar on this, so not worried about that. They did include private schools as part of this was after Covenant, so they made a change. So now private schools will have to adhere to these same guidelines. So I'm glad for some equity and as far as, because normally they just target public schools for this, but they have now included private schools and church-related schools. So you'll see that. And then by July 1st of this year and each July 1st after, each LEA and public charters school shall provide the following to each law enforcement agency. So at the Department of Education and the Department of Safety. We may already be doing some of this. I don't know what we have to submit to the state currently, but we have to submit to GPD, the Department of Ed and Safety, our school-wide safety plan, the safety plan for each school, the floor plans. And then each LEA and public charter school shall provide the school safety plans to a law enforcement or emergency response participating in armed intruder drill. So I think we do some of this, but we might have to do a little bit more than what we're currently doing. All right. There's requirements for annual drills, and we're doing a lot of this already. But we shall conduct an armed intruder drill, an incident command drill, and an emergency safety bus drill. And then it's got to be in coordination with each law enforcement. And then it talks about the safety bus drill. So again, and then you got to talk about the results of the drill, and it's got to be maintained. by the school for a minimum of 5 years, and then made available to GPD for us.
How much of this is redundant? I'm sitting here thinking, I thought we were already required to have a school safety plan. I thought we were already required to do these drills. At what point, I mean, how much of this is redundant, and at what point is this new?
I would say 80%, but 20% is new. But my concern is the 20% is arduous. Like there's some of these I'm curious about how we're going to maintain them. And also, too, where they're sent to, sharing of some of those details are new about who we're following them with. Those haven't been requirements.
All right, so the school building entrances required to be locked. I did contact Ms. Estes prior to the meeting. This is a section that we need to talk about. So we're good on A. Each public school, all exterior doors are locked at all times. Access is limited. Everything's great there. Now, TSBA, so this has been a concern where I have been in contact with other legislative representatives. I've been in contact with TSBA about this one. So TSBA says that here, basically the buildings are locked at all times and access to school buildings is limited to the school's primary entrance unless otherwise determined by school policy to prevent unauthorized entry into the school building while they're a day, as well as when outside of regular school activities. But then there is this next clause, notwithstanding subsection A, outside of regular school hours, a public school operated by an LEA, public charter school, private school, or church-related may unlock the door to the school's building's primary entrance during a school-related event or activity if the door is continuously monitored by a school or LEA employee who is physically present at the door to ensure access is limited to only authorized persons and to alert others if an unauthorized persons. So, Ms. Estes, I know we talked, so I don't know if you've got thoughts on this one, because the definition of notwithstanding is key there. Because it says you can have a policy, but then notwithstanding, and that's where I wanted Ms. Estes to kind of give her thoughts on this, because this is one that we need to talk about.
Yeah, I think what we're gonna need to do is treat these separately, is look at how do we function during school hours, how do we function after school hours for events. You know, a lot of schools, and you access through the general lobby before you get to the gym for the basketball game. And I think sort of that's what they're envisioning with a lot of this, or before you get to the theater for the plays, when you've got all these other people coming. What it is gonna require is that we have a school or a district employee at that door. So for every event, it's not just security that GMSD is furnishing. It is going to also be an employee.
Our challenge with this are not school events, because typically when we have a play, when we have a basketball game, when we have a football game, we have school staff that are there monitoring entrances. Now, we may be moving the main entrance where it is for that event. My concern here is with the events that are not GMSD. So our buildings are open to the recreational sports after hours. We do not have GMSD staff that are monitoring entrances, that are opening doors. We provide access and keys to the Parks and Recreation Department, who manage those buildings. They're the ones who are opening the buildings for those events and allowing those people into the building. I
think we're okay on that one, because those aren't school-related activities. So it's a city activity. So, GBL basketball game playing over at Forest Hill, they just happen to be using our facility, but that's not a school-related activity. So I don't think we're obligated under this law to do anything. And then the next section,
Yeah, but it doesn't specifically state in that it has to be school-related activity. It says that it's a physical building.
Look on B on the.
during a school-related event. So my concern here is this. An LEA employee is not trained in law enforcement. So what are they doing at the door? Because they're not they're not trained to look at people. So we have an SRO present. So like at our curriculum night over our fine arts night, our SRO was present. So not a problem. I mean, he was there. He wasn't at the door, but he was there. He's trained on what to look for. He knows if there's someone that's looking suspicious. He knows what to look for. But if we have the assistant principal at the door, she doesn't know what to look for. She doesn't know, and there's not a checklist to say, oh, you belong, because you look at grandparents' days or something like that. They don't know, So the practical implementation of this has been a major concern because the burden it's going to put. I look at at some of our events, at Houston High School for schedule pickup. There's not the building's unlocked. I mean, it's pretty much everyone's coming in, so you can't funnel in to one entrance. And if you do that, you're creating a safety situation that you're trying to prevent, because then you have you could have 1,000 people or 1,000 people queuing up outside the door trying to go into one entrance. That makes no sense.
I'm confused about the policy. What about arrival?
Well,
we don't push students into the buildings through one entrance at arrival.
Yeah, nor should you.
We
because
have
that's a
we
safety
have a system that's programmed. The doors open after arrival. The system locks the doors. I'm not sure how arrival fits into this, but
I think if you look in A,
Let's go back up.
where
Oh, sorry.
access is limited to the school's primary entrance, and then where it's qualified and says unless otherwise determined by school policy. And so I think we can design a policy that stresses the fact that we specifically believe that it is unsafe for 1,600 kids to filter in one door within a 5-minute time frame. And so we have by school policy, we have established during these specific hours, other access is granted. But again, my recommendation would be, of course, subject to y'all wanting to do it, would be that every access is manned to some degree, and security is provided. Now, whether we have that many SROs in the schools, I don't know. I mean, that gets into logistics. I was going through this when Board Member Curry asked me to, and one of the comments I wrote down was, the new requirement that all classroom doors locked. And I wrote that down, and then I started laughing, and I thought, well, they're already ahead on that. So, one of those things that luckily y'all are already ahead of the game on those kind of things. There also is proposed federal legislation brought by our 2 state senators for a huge amount of money to fund, I think it will come in the form of grants for schools or for veterans to be trained and then hired by schools to provide additional security. Yeah. And now that may be more beneficial to the schools who don't have a GPD, that works with them like Germantown does. But at least, hopefully that might help in offsetting some of this. But again, that's just at a proposal level. That's way down the road.
Yeah, the concern, and this is, and they said there was no fiscal note, which again I disagree vehemently, because if we're going to have LEA employees, that there's going to be a cost associated there to do that. But I think at a basketball game, right? So we'll just take an example of a high school basketball game. All right, well, if again a lot of times you'll see an assistant principal or staff working the door, but again, they don't know. If you look at it, who an unauthorized person, I mean that's open to the community. It's a basketball game, and so they're going to pay their money and come in, but what are they looking for? Because again, I don't. So I think this. Now I will say this was written pre-covenant. This legislation, a lot of it was. So this wasn't. This has been in the works for a while. So this was the governor's safety plan. But it's clear, and I appreciate what they're trying to do, but it's clear that whoever wrote this doesn't really have much education experience, because they're not really thinking of the day-to-day and how this is going to work and the activities that go on after school. Like the track practice. You got over at the high school, you got the weight room there. They're going back and forth. Well, they're going back and forth between the track and that. Well, you can't have someone standing at the door because that's not practical. They're running the practice. And so, but the reason I talk about it is if we scroll down, so state and local law enforcement personnel are authorized to inspect a door serving as an entrance to or exit from an LEA. And there is no limit on the number of inspections. And then basically what we have here is if law enforcement personnel find that the door to an entrance or exit is unlocked in violation of subsection A, but they don't mention B, so maybe that's the key here. But under subsection A, the school must immediately lock the door, and law enforcement shall notify all sorts of people. They'll notify the superintendent, be Chairman Strain, the head of the PTO for that particular school, the principal, the Department of Safety, the Department of Education, and each law enforcement. Oh yeah. And I brought that to their attention yesterday. I said, hey, just letting y'all know that you now get to have a part to play here.
The catch-all provision in that.
But there's financial penalties involved, and for multiple violations, you lose 2% of TISA funding. For the third is 2%, fourth is 4% in a year, one school year. So there's financial penalties, so this is, but again, they don't mention, so maybe this is the thing, it doesn't mention, it's subsection A. So if the door's unlocked. So for us, and here's going to be the thing, Shelby County Sheriff's Department under this law can come by and just do a random check. Highway Patrol can come by and do a random check. So it's not just GPD, and we don't have any control over the Sheriff's Department. I mean, we don't have any control over GPD, but we have a relationship with them. But the Sheriff's Department under this law or Highway Patrol could be riding up the road and say, I want to go check the door. And so, but again, that is going to it's very specific for a violation of subsection A. So if we go back up here to subsection A, then I'm actually feeling a little bit better about this because all the penalties are related to this only. Except then we'll have to, so from a policy standpoint, that might be from the financial penalties unless otherwise determined by school policy, as well as when students are present outside of regular school. So that might be, but everything is based on subsection A as far as the financial penalties.
Another thing I think that is going to trigger is y'all looking at, and I know you've discussed it before, is public events that are held when children are present. There is some voting that occurs during the year when students are here, and I don't know if anything has changed since the last time we spoke about that. But unless you're going to tell everybody voting, you may only come in through this door, and you've got someone, and that then we're going to pull an employee. We're going to build a county election to stand at the door
heavily.
To watch, and that means you're pulling someone away from what
you're
wanting to do, which is educate the students.
But that can also be viewed as a voter intimidation.
Argument could be.
Because when you're dealing with any type of anyone standing in the way of a voter coming in to vote, that's problematic. And so if we have a GMSD employee monitoring who's coming in to vote,
well, I think
that's
this
crossing a line.
This prompts us to have a conversation with the Election Commission to say, effective immediately, you must find another, because we have to be in compliance with the school safety bill that was passed by the General Assembly. We have no other recourse. You've got between now and 2024 to figure out alternate sites. But as of now, you were no longer authorized to use. I hate to, but we're going to have to, by law.
By law, we
we're gonna
cannot
have a direct conversation with the Election Commission to say we're done here. And they need to know to plan, because again, it's that, or you will be billed heavily for our staffing of this.
Yeah, and it's not like we can delegate the staffing because the law is very specific that it is a school or LEA employee. If I'm getting ahead of you jumping into
No, it's fine.
this, but this whole sort of, everything that the governor's been working on in this, and then the state legislature, they're looking they're forming this state-level safety team, and it's got a list a mile long of the entities that are going to be participating in this and giving input. It's Homeland Security, you name, just any law enforcement group you can think of in Tennessee, and it's got other sort of elements to it. There is an anticipated sort of like a template that the Tennessee Department of Education will put forth. And so, I know the safety plan here is very, very detailed, very, very thorough, and has been implemented in conjunction with law enforcement. And so, I think what y'all may end up looking at is you're gonna have state requirements. My guess is you're already there, 90% of it above and beyond. But still, there are gonna be some quirks in there that you're gonna have to address. And again, knowing what you've already got in place, it's sort of like, hey, these are the people that are here every day. We have taken every measure possible for school safety, but,
So, yeah, this takes effect. So you see, for the purposes of promulgating rules, this act takes effect upon becoming a law, public welfare requiring it for all other purposes. It takes effect on July 1st, 2023. So I think we will have to, we're going to have some help. Obviously, hopefully TSBA's got something, but I think we're going to have a pretty distinct policy. But then I don't know, Ms. Estes, how much of the policy, because when you start getting into security, I think you don't want to have too much publicly, because you don't want to telegraph, So I think we'll have to have a policy that satisfies the legal requirements, but also protects the general interest. Or we're not disclosing security plans or protocols.
yeah, I think we're gonna have to look at what is required to be in the public domain and what we can keep out of the public domain for safety reasons. And, some of the things obviously are gonna be designating which doors we're gonna allow access during school hours. That doesn't overly concern me, because I think anybody can kind of figure that one out.
I think we're good there, yeah.
Yeah.
But I got to think about, we're going to have fifth grade graduations coming up at schools. I'm going to be participating in one myself. And so we're going to be in the gym here. And so obviously we're good now, but I think about going forward. So are the people going to have to register? We're going to have to think about that, because again, who's authorized to be there? Because that's where you're mixing general public with ongoing school activities there. Now that's during the day. Logistically, but it's just, those are things that maybe we've taken for granted in the past, but we'll have to be very intentional about going forward, just due to the financial penalties that are there. It's kind of this is the stick. There's a lot more stick than carrot here. And I take school safety very, very seriously. I did though point out to our PTO in the meeting yesterday, Covenant had all the locked doors. They had all the stuff, and it still happened. So unfortunately, they even had armed personnel there. So we just have to make sure that we keep doing the right things. I'm very glad now. I'm thankful that we got Houston Middle done, because that solved. We would have been hugely exposed at Houston Middle, but now with our secured entrance there, no issues. Like I said, during the day it's fine, but I did want to point that out. Now there are some amendments that I want to go through quickly. All these amendments were adopted. So this is talking, I mentioned this when Mr. Cathy was presenting. This is amendment. So any building constructed or remodeled after July 1st of this year must include, at a minimum, a door locking mechanism on each classroom door that allows it to be locked from the inside. Have installed a clear bullet-resistant or entry-resistant film on the glass panel of each exterior entry or basement level window and door to prevent individuals from entering the building without authorization by breaking the glass and an exterior entry. So again, I'm thinking ahead to Houston High School on that. That's going to be, we'll have to do it there because it's going to be by law. And I think the others will be on a, whenever we're able to do it. Include a camera system that continuously monitors each entrance, hallway, and communal area in the school building during regular school hours and during school-related events and activities conducted on grounds that is accessible by local law enforcement agency in emergency situations. I think we're good there, right? So no issues there. And then include at least one secure vestibule that serves as the primary entrance that contains 2 separate sets of doors through which a person, again, that's a secure entrance. So we're well ahead of the game on that one. But that's going to be for anything that's remodeled after July 1st. So that's an amendment that passed. Another amendment that passed, this was talking about the safety plans and security systems. Okay, this was dealing more with like private and church-related schools, specifically. I think we're good on this one. And I think some of this was already included about the floor plans. Let's see, this was, by July 1st, each LEA and public charter school shall provide the following to each law enforcement agency with jurisdiction. Again, I don't know why the state needs it necessarily, but I think we've worked with GPD, so a lot of that we're good. And then the last one, this was a floor amendment. So each district-wide school safety team and building level school safety team shall consider. So this isn't a shall; it's just saying shall consider including in this safety plan or building level plan the implementation of a mobile panic alert system that is capable of connecting the diverse emergency services to ensure real-time coordination between first responders and that integrates with local safety. So that is a shall consider. It's not a shall, you've got to do it, but it's saying a shall consider going forward. So I'm not sure, Mr. Mayor, what your thoughts on that one are specifically. I know there's definitely coordination with GPD, but yeah. Yeah, so I feel, and I think the public needs to understand our coordination with GPD. We've got a very unique relationship there. I don't know that Collierville has the relationship with the school. I know what we have. I also know that Lakeland, for instance, they don't have a police department, local, so they have to coordinate with Shelby County Sheriff's Department. So, but I think for us, coordinating with GPD, having the SROs, and they're there. They're part of they're part of the fabric of the schools. They're there. They're identified. They know what they're doing. And so, I send my kid to school every day with the utmost confidence that they're in the safest environment that we can possibly provide. And so I'm proud of our plans. I know what we've got. But again, this law now is in effect, so we have to go back in and really consider all the possibilities because of the financial penalties because again, we just don't know. It could be, I guess it could be TBI could come by. Any law enforcement could come by at any point. So it's not going to necessarily be GPD. Again, it could be highway patrol. Maybe they just come through and they just want to drive through the neighborhood and and if they find something, then the whole process is put into place there. So that is the governor's school safety bill that did pass both houses. That's on its way. So I wanted to make sure that we were aware of that as a board.
Is there any other further business?
Yes.
Good.
So this will be my last one. This is a bill, House Bill 448. This is the public comment bill. Hopefully my audio is going to play. I wanted to talk about this one. So this has passed both houses. Oh yeah, I could do that. All right, so I want to show the video on this one because I think the video helps. I'm not going to show all of these. I do want to show the state government committee on this one, and I want to show the House floor session because that's going to provide context for the rest of the discussion that I want to have on this one. Oh. Yeah, I don't, so,
Hit this right here also.
oh. That's telling me it's not working. I'm sorry. Yeah,
So go into.
all right, bear with me here real quick. So did we figure out which setting it was?
With your bill? 4149. Please turn your mic on, I think, okay? We have,
4149, yes, sir.
okay, we have a motion and a second on the amendment. Tell us, it doesn't rewrite the bill, does?
No, sir, it does not. Essentially, what the bill does is it allows for public comment in governmental bodies. And we had, the amendment goes to, if there's a disciplinary hearing, we had the Department of Health request that they kind of had an exception because they did not want to have public comment during some of those licensure hearings.
Okay.
And so we wanted to ensure that we were accommodating them. But essentially, this bill allows for, we have public comment in practice, but we just don't have it codified in law. And so what we're wanting to do is just ensure those First Amendment protections for our citizens, that they have the ability to come and redress their government. But with those governmental bodies, they have the ability to make any of those kind of reasonable restrictions with regard to the length of period, the length of time that someone can speak, the number of speakers, to ensure that the topic that they speak to is germane to the agenda. And so with that, I'm here for any
All right.
questions, and I would
Okay,
appreciate your support.
With that objection, we'll go ahead and put the amendment on the bill. We had a motion and a second. All in favor of adding the amendment, Code 4149 to House Bill 448, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The amendment is on the bill. Now you're recognized on the bill. Do you have any further comment?
I just stand for questions.
All right. Any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we're voting on House Bill 448.
Ms. Estes, I'd like to point you, when Representative Hardaway comes up to speak, I'd like to get your thoughts on what his comments here.
Roll that to Thursday's regular calendar, please.
Without objection, roll to Thursday's calendar. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 144 by Leader Lambert and others relative to criminal offenses.
Most Research table. Call next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 448 by Representative Davis relative to public meetings.
Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If we could roll that to Thursday's regular calendar, please.
Without objection, roll to Thursday. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 448 by Representative Davis and others relative to public meetings.
Representative Davis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 448 on third and final consideration.
Representative Davis moves passage. Bob seconded. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Kiesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment is to exclude from application meetings of a governing body held to conduct disciplinary hearings and meetings where there are no actionable items on the agenda. We're going to defer to Representative Davis for further explanation, Mr. Speaker. We move to adopt.
Chairman Kiesling moves adoption of amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment 2 by Representative Davis, Mr. Speaker, was timely filed.
Representative Davis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt amendment number 2. This amendment changed the effective date from upon passage to July the 1st, 2023.
Representative Davis moves adoption of amendment number 2, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Since this was non-committee amendment, it's going on the board. All those in favor vote aye when the bell rings. All those opposed vote no. Cochran, aye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 87, no nays, 1 present not voting.
Amendment number 2 is adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Davis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for adoption of House Bill 448 as amended. And essentially, this bill allows for a governing body to have a public comment period. And with that, I renew my motion.
Representative Davis renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Powell.
Thank you. Sponsor, I had a question, and I realize this, you said that this gives a public comment period, but could this possibly limit citizen participation and the ability to participate in that public comment? And also my second component of that question is, I have a concern about if you had a very contentious issue, that being applied unequally, so that, you know, there could be one day there's a 30-minute public comment, and the next day that public comment might be limited to, say, 5 minutes. I just want to make sure that if you could address those issues.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to answer those questions, essentially, this does allow for those reasonable restrictions for that governing body to allow for the amount of time, the number of speakers, to ensure that the topics are germane to the agenda. But it also specifically states that that governing body shall take all practical steps to ensure that opposing viewpoints are represented fairly. So we want to make sure that citizens do have the right to redress their government, which is under their First Amendment protections, and then also to make sure that those opposing viewpoints are allowed to be presented as well.
Representative Powell. Pass. Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. To the sponsor, on the language which says that there have to be actionable items, agenda items, that's not to be interpreted as the vote on those or the action on those items has to be in that meeting, but just if they are actionable items at some point.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Essentially, what that does address concerns for some groups about workshops, that they didn't want to have too many public comments or that to take up their time for those workshop meetings. They wanted to essentially allow for public comment to be on the governing body's meetings where votes would be taken, where there could be potential action for those meetings. Does that answer your question?
Representative Hardaway.
I'm not sure, but I'm going to rephrase it. Even if the vote for that actionable item is not on that date or in that particular meeting, in some regards, I would say that we could schedule debate for one meeting, the vote for the next meeting. Your goal is not to allow governmental bodies to circumvent that period for public to be involved.
Representative Davis.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And you are correct. Essentially what we're allowing for is we're creating kind of a general brace to allow for specificity elsewhere for that governing body to determine how they want to implement that in practice. And so in order to make sure that citizens' voices are heard, we do want to make sure that public comment, that time frame is codified. So if there are actionable items that are taken, that governing body has to put that public comment on their agenda.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you. Thank you, sponsor.
Any further? Representative Davis.
And with that, I'll renew my motion.
Representative Davis renews her motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, all righty. We are voting. All those in favor of House Bill 448 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Keesley, no. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 82, 6 nays.
House Bill 448 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby.
Okay, so that passed obviously with bipartisan support. So Ms. Estes, my thought after reading it, I was thinking at first this was only going to apply to our business meetings, but after the back and forth between Representative Hardaway and the sponsor there, I'm led to believe that we would need to allow comment in a work session because there are items, even though they're not directly actionable. I personally don't have a problem with that. I would think here if we were to have public comment today, we would have it after item number 8. But I don't know. So I want to make sure we're in compliance with law, but I don't know. So that's why I wanted to get your thought after that back and forth, what your opinion was on that.
Yeah, I disagree that it would be public comment during work sessions. And the reason why, I think this of course will be in the legislative history when we have actionable items. The only way this board ever takes official action is in a public board meeting, other than perhaps an executive session, disciplinary matter. But this board never takes, quote, action during a work session. You don't do it during your retreats. You don't do it when you are all at TSBA. We have, everything is open to the public, but you are not taking action during that time. And so, at first I thought what he was talking about, actionable items versus agenda items. But, even if something is on, a first reading, or if it's on second reading and adopting or authorizing execution of a contract, that is taking action, as Subramani calls the role. I think as something that we're doing like today, where it is general discussion, general information purposes, there is no actionable item that is brought before the board other than the background information is provided to you, but it is not anticipated, nor is it ever done that you would be taking action in this context. I think the significant part of this is that there certainly is a big push to limit the public comment to the agenda items. I think that recognizes what a lot of districts and a lot of other public entities have gone to, is that while the law doesn't allow you to restrict speech just because you don't like what someone's going to say, and we all changed our policy within 10 minutes of the Sixth Circuit issuing that decision in ISOM about defining it as abusive because we can't have prior restraint. But what governmental entities are permitted to do is to have limits that as to time, place, so we can put reasonable time constraints. Now that has to be, as one of the legislatures pointed out, we can't say those who are in favor of what we want to do, y'all get a 30-minute time slot, and if you don't like us, you're down to 30 seconds. While tempting, you may not do that. But, it's one good thing about this, some boards, what they do is look at, you have to have it on the agenda item, or comment only on matters that are on the agenda, unless you get approval from an individual board member ahead of time. That was addressed actually just yesterday in a pleading in the Wilson County case that we all discussed maybe at our last work session, that was calling into question how that's done. This board, certainly as long as I've been around, has never restricted any type of topic at all. And it's just been able to go whichever direction. For the most part, I think only a couple of times has it looked like the time was going to get excessive, and there has just been a request that y'all, if 5 of you are saying the same thing, if y'all could all get together just in the interest of time. But but it never happened that way. But I personally don't like I like either, I think the safest course of action under the First Amendment is either no restriction whatsoever as to topic or limiting it to the agenda items.
And so, because this was an item that was brought forth in further business, I don't know how we want to do it. I've got a proposed change to this policy I'd like to bring forward. And so it'll be up to however we want to do it, if we want to bring it forward for this upcoming meeting or for May, but I am requesting that we bring forward, because we're going to have to make changes no matter what with the law there. And so, and there was some previous changes about where we mentioned about the, the address and stuff. So I've got the proposed, I don't know, Vice Chair, how you want to do this.
Well, here's my recommendation, and y'all can we can make adjustments as needed. My recommendation is we wait until May, but I would like for you to potentially work with Mr. Manuel to make sure the language is what you want it to be, and make sure, Ms. Estes, that it's in line with the law. And then that would give us a work session to discuss the policy itself as a group before we address it in a business meeting.
Yeah, and so, yeah, I've done that. I basically, and I'm happy to wait until May. Basically, all I did was copy and paste the law in there. And that was it. So, but I am pushing that we conform to state law. And so if we want to have the discussion on this in May, that's fine. But I feel like conforming to the law here will eliminate any confusion whatsoever. And so however we want to do it, but my request would be to have this in place in time for the July 1 implementation of the law.
I think it would just be wiser to give us that May time so that we have a thorough discussion with all of our board members present. Because it's not a rush job. It's not like July 1st is next month. We can give it the time that it needs to have that good discussion so that we can craft the policy in a way that we're happy using what you've started with potentially, or have the discussion and then vote it up or down at the business meeting. I just don't see adding it at this point. I think it would be too quick. That's my recommendation. Mr. Manuel, do you have any comment on that?
I'll go with that. If you'll go ahead and send that to me, though, we can go ahead and start working on it, and then I'll share it with Ms. Beekman and Ms. Estes. They can coordinate together for what that looks like.
I'll just say on the front end, I'm going to be pretty hesitant to support a change that limits the topic of conversation for the meetings for a couple reasons. One, as much as people try to keep track of things, sometimes we do something that they didn't know was going to come because life's busy, and I don't agree with not letting them have the chance to come to address us. And two, in the current climate, I just feel like that's going to land as a trying to silence speech a little bit.
Yeah, I understand that. And like I said, I felt it was important to see what the General Assembly had to say on this. I think they were very clear that the General Assembly was not looking for an open mic. They were very clear, and they codified it into items germane to the agenda. So again, that's the change that I will be bringing forward for the board in May. And if the board chooses to adopt it, great. If not, then we will have to make some changes to the policy no matter what. But you'll see. So what I'll send you is what I drafted, kind of based on the law and all that, and then you can take that, and then we'll just bring it forward for May.
Understand too that this is a change in Tennessee law. Until this is signed by the governor, there still is no right in Tennessee for any person to appear before any body such as this and speak. So that is I don't know if right is the correct word to use, but that is a privilege that this board grants to its citizens, and as does many school boards. But it is not currently in Tennessee law. So this law, if it's signed by the governor, is a huge jump in Tennessee because it will codify the right to speak at meetings, but only on topics that are on the agenda. They just want to establish it's got to be germane to the business that's coming before the board. Now, again,
But am I reading it correct that it says it allows the organization to place, I don't read it as that it requires the organization to place restrictions. It allows them to.
yeah, but right now, there is nothing in the law that says you even have the right to allow.
Sure. But if so if this becomes law, though, it would allow us to place a restriction. It wouldn't require us to.
You have okay, by
Because what I'm saying
granting
is I would not want to place a restriction.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that by granting the privilege to speak, you have the right or the choice to not restrict to any topic, to leave it only to agenda items, or, you can look at a hybrid, which is what several boards do, which I am strongly against.
Right.
Which is, there's something I want to talk about, it's not on the agenda, so I go to Ms. Griffith and I say, will you sign off and let me talk?
Yeah.
Well, that's just, giving the board member the power to decide, to censor or to decide or restrict, okay? So that's why I'm very much opposed to that, to following that. In my opinion, it's either all or agenda. And, but this is a big change, because as of right now, it's just strictly at the discretion or the whim, even if you wanted to say, of the board.
Okay, man, now I'm confused. Okay, so subsection A, shall reserve, so that's changing it because it's not currently, that are germane to the items on the agenda for the meeting. So it already says that part, which would be a major change for us from a restriction standpoint. So would that be required or not?
I don't think they're removing and again, anytime we talk about proposed legislation, I qualify everything until I see the governor's signature on it. But I don't think this is taking away your right to be more expansive, if that's what you want to do.
Well, because it says right here in that, and then down below, then it allows for other restrictions. To me, the only restriction that would potentially be required is germane to the agenda. The way it's written now.
Well, you can restrict as to time.
Oh, like we already do.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's very reasonable, and there are thousands of cases out there that take the position that not only is it reasonable for a governmental entity to do that, but it'd kind of be crazy not to.
Right.
Know?
Well, and
You can't function otherwise.
And it codifies that, and that's been an issue where we've heard, where people have been up in arms about the amount of time, and again, I wanted the public to see what was said in the committee and on the floor, and so that there's no confusion whatsoever, that it's the intent of the General Assembly that the board basically sets parameters around. And I can tell you I can't remember which the Senate or the House, one of them allows 2 minutes to speak, one allows 3 minutes to speak, and you have to register 48 hours in advance before you go. So those are the restrictions that the General Assembly has in place. So it's all by time. And I think the bill sponsor was clear. I don't think there was any ambiguity there, that they wanted to leave it up to local bodies to to make it clear, I'm not suggesting any change to our time, like the 3 minutes. I think it just basically is codified now that we have the ability to do that, and that is, I think Ms. Estes pointed out, there was nothing in law, so we had a policy, but now we can point to a law and actually say, yes, this is a law, and we're following said law.
Well, and once the governor's signature, assuming it does, is signed on this bill, then we'll likely get something from TSBA or something kind of showing us like, hey, this is the bare minimum that you've got to do based on the legal requirements or statute requirement. And then I'm going to continue to say I'm all for least restrictive. We're already there. I've read every policy across the state, and you can't find someone that allows more people to talk about more things for the more length of time than us. And so this only just says about the germane to the agenda item and codifies the fact that you even are required to allow somebody to speak, which we already prioritize.
I have to say, I don't want to draw out the discussion on this too long, but I won't be here for the May work session. So this is kind of my thought on this policy. So like, I mean, obviously now there's a law we can point at to say like we need to conform to this standard, and so we're gonna change the policy. However, you have to like look at how the optics make it seem. Like, not everyone's gonna watch this work session. Not everyone's gonna see that statement. It's gonna be, you know, GMSD is reducing the clarity of their policy and like restricting free speech. That's the headline people are gonna see. I mean, whether we like it or not, whether we have information that contradicts that or not, that's what people are gonna see if you make this change. That's my biggest concern.
No, and I appreciate that. And like I said, this is something that I think we need to talk about. I personally feel conforming to the law is the way to go. That's just my personal feel. Again, I might be the only one that views that, and I'm prepared to articulate that because I can tell you the amount of grief that we caught over citizens addressing the board over the past, the grief that former Chairman Griffith had to put up with over that was uncalled for. And that the fact that we now have a law in place where we can say, here's the law. If you don't like the law, take it up with the General Assembly. We follow the law. And so, I mean, that's my thought. I understand where you're coming from. And again, we'll hash this out more in May and see. But I understand and respect where you're coming from. I just want to make sure we're clear on why I'm bringing forth the change is because I think conforming to the law eliminates all confusion. Because at that point, then you're taking it out. Again, if you don't like the way we're doing it, take it up with the General Assembly. You can talk to Representative White or Representative Vaughn or Senator Taylor if you want something more. But as far as conforming to the law, I think I'll plant my flag on the law any day of the week.
For sake of time for us, I think we're already getting into debating the policy that isn't even before the board yet, and we're in further business. It may be helpful for us to move this to the table this till the May.
Okay,
like I said, if you send this to us,
you've already got it in your email.
Awesome.
Okay,
then
so
we'll
we
do
have
that, and we
that.
can have this because I have a feeling we're going to have this discussion again.
We'll be like, this is deja vu.
Sorry, you
all
won't be
over
there,
again.
Joseph.
Okay, so this is, again, we'll have the discussion in May to relook at that policy and make the changes that are absolutely necessary, because there will be changes necessary. And any other additional changes may or may not be. All right, it is 4:49, and this meeting is adjourned.